Hello, good morning, buongiorno. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I would like to introduce myself. I am the president of the Bologna Exhibition Center, Bologna Fair, and it is a great honor for me to welcome you to EXPO. I would like to warmly thank for being here, first of all, our friends from Nuremberg Messe, who represent the authority and importance of biofactory. In particular, our friends, Mr. Caterra, the representative of Nuremberg Messe in Italy. And we are waiting to have here also Mr. Peter Ottman, the CEO of Nuremberg Messe. And now our thanks also to Mrs. and Mrs. Ottman. We represent today Nuremberg Messe. So representatives of IFOAM International, in particular Dr. Marcus Arbens, the Executive Director for the scientific organization of this event. All our friends, also from FederBio, Mr. Pinton, and the Agricultural Association of Organic Production in Italy, and of course each one of you. We are now in the Biodiversity Park, one of the 4 grid-specific areas of EXPO that intends to focalize among the main contents of the Universal Exposition, the Green 10, as you know, of safeguarding biodiversity and thus sustainable development. Bologna Fair is proud to have received from the Italian government, the Ministry of Agricultural Policies and EXPO, the assignment to organize this area due to the fact that we are, since many years, the organizers of the exhibition Sana, reference point for organic products in Italy. For this reason, it is for us a special honor that Nuremberg Messe and IFOAM have accepted our invitation to be present here in EXPO, in our area, and we hope to deserve the possibility to continue to collaborate with them. As you have seen and will see, I hope that you have a little time for that, we have organized this biodiversity park as a little tour d'Italy among the great landscapes of our country, from the grasslands of the mountains close to Lake Arena, to the cultivation of the great plains of the north and south of Italy, up to the colors of the Mediterranean. We have organized in the organic biological pavilion, that is here, the presence of the leading Italian organic producers that are naturally our partners in Sana, to demonstrate together that the choice of organic farming is necessary to preserve the biodiversity heritage. At the moment, you and me, we are in the Teatro della Terra, in Italian language. It means the theater of the earth, that we have built because we wanted to host in EXPO the presence not only of the emotion of the green space that it's necessary to have here in EXPO, also a little green space, but also and above all to witness the words and the efforts of all those who play an important role in really reaching the great aim of feeding the planet, which means really to take care of this world, which is a gift to us, and we must understand that we have to ensure a good life and a good future to all the creatures of this world. We knew and we know that EXPO is a great feast, as you can see today. A great feast of lights and colors. And we are happy that it represents a moment of entertainment for the many people that have visited and will visit EXPO. At the same time, we hope to hear loud and clear the three words of a new and indispensable development. The first results have already been obtained to this regard, such as the constitution here in this biodiversity park of the International Organic Forum, that today is represented also by Mr. Pinton, deeply supported by all the Italian associations of organic agriculture, and backed up by the ministry with whom we sincerely hope to write in the Carta di Milano, the final document of EXPO, drawn up during EXPO, the commitments to foster in Italy and in the world organic farming that, as our great friend Vandana Shiva said during she opened it on the 16th of May this park, that this is the only way, the organic agriculture is the only way to favor the growth of the seeds of the hope for the new necessary solutions. During Sana, which opens on the 12th of September in Bologna, the Italian government will present, according to the commitment of the forum, the new development plan for organic products in Italy. We are sure that this organic week will give a fundamental contribution thanks to the international experience for which we are very grateful. Another time to BioFac and Bergamese and to before. The first great values of EXPO, we think, is that it is the meeting point of all countries. Merit should also go to BioFac and IFOAM, who have given life to a very important cultural, scientific, economic and social movement for new organic farming. With this event, with Organic Week, we have wanted and we want in EXPO, with your help, to contribute to the growth of this novel thought, thanks to the contents and conclusions of the meeting. I wish you a successful participation and good luck to our dream of an organic world. Thank you very much. And now I think the word is for you.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to introduce you, Mrs. Bandel.
Good morning to everybody. Our CEO, Peter Bottmann, sends his kind regards. Unfortunately, he is not able to be here in this morning. An urgent matter concerning our supervisory board made his presence in Nuremberg indispensable. End of June, he announced in a press conference here at the Biodiversity Park the joint project, the Organic Week. I'm Stefania Calcaterra, Managing Director of the Italian subsidiary of Nuremberg Messe Group. And in absence to Mr. Peter Bottmann, I will open today the Organic Week. Thanks to the cooperation between Nuremberg Messe Group and Bologna Fiere, whom we have the pleasure to work with also within EMECA, we had the chance to realize this project. Especially, we would like to thank the president of Bologna Fiere, Lucio Campagnoli, because it was his idea, and he had this idea originally when he visited us in Nuremberg during BioFar in February this year. Nice to see that between European fair organizers such partnership can be created. We would also like to thank IFOAM and FederBio for the hard work they invested to compile this high-class program. And now I hand over to Markus Arbenz of IFOAM, who will explain what will wait you in the following 3 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucio. Thank you, Stefani. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of IFOAM Organics International, the global organic movement. Thank you actually for taking this initiative. You have mentioned it already. It's an extraordinary partnership that has been created between Bologna Fiere, organizer of the Sana Fair, and Nuremberg Messe, organizer of the BioFar Fair. IFOAM Organics International is usually partner of BioFar around the world, so not only in Nuremberg, but also in China, in the United States, in Brazil, in Japan, and in India, there are BioFar fairs. So this message, which we create now, will actually go around the world. I said I welcome you on behalf of the organic movement. Who is the organic movement? These are first of all the members of IFOAM, 800 members in 120 countries. Imagine, those 800 members make possible actually that we have an organic turnover, consumer purchases of 70 billion a year. We have 2 million farmers around the world to make it happen what we're talking about. And they cultivate 80 million hectares or certified organic land. One of these members is FederBio, with Roberto Pinton representing and welcoming you here on behalf of the Italian organic movement. But the organic movement is not only the formal umbrella, it's also action networks. And Lucio has already mentioned to you that there is this Organic Feed the Planet Action Network, an action network which brings to high attention the topic actually of how organic can contribute to feed the world here in Organic Expo, an expo which is actually not an organic expo, which is an expo which goes actually to the mainstream and goes with the topic of we feeding the planet energy for life. In this debate actually, which happens here at Milano, we would like to contribute in this biodiversity pavilion with our daily biodiversity, emphasizing that we are living biodiversity and we do that every day. We have 3 days here to discuss. On the very first day, we put soil in the foreground. Soil, we are in the year of the soil of the United Nations, will be the topic today. Tomorrow, we look at really the food security. We look at the topic feeding the planet sustainably or not at all. And day 3, we look into the future. The future of organic agriculture is Organic 3.0. I think with this events, we would like to remind the public also constantly about the important role of sustainability when it comes to strategize our future. We have to be reminded that we don't live for today only, but we have also a next generation that want to have equal opportunities to feed the people and to live decently. We debating here in this very room, but the debate here shall go further. We have social media today which are accompanying us, and social media which bring the message out there before the event, during the event, and also after the event. And I'd like to thank you very much for participating, and the last words of opening will go actually to the Italian organic movement, Roberto.
So, after free welcome and opening, there is very little to say, and because I know you want we go straight to the point, and you have to thank your goals that no national, regional, or local government is involved because
because you have had 3 other welcome, and so we are going to the issue. We have had a long discussion in FederBio and the organic movement, choosing if being or not being in EXPO, because we were afraid it was a big Disneyland with large companies, and it is not, we are not sure that the Barilla, Ferrero, McDonald's and Coca-Cola are the most the most interesting company to speak about sustainability. And we think if we have 20 million people visiting EXPO, maybe it's interesting to try to explain to 20 million persons what is really sustainability. And maybe 20 million persons aren't in our meeting, but if they want, they could take part, and we are in the press, in television, and so on. We established the Organic Action Network with the patronage of all IFOAM EU, Agribio Mediterraneo, ISOFAR, which is the Italian group of researchers in organic agriculture, all the Italian Organic and Biodynamic Organization, WWF, and the Organic chapter of Mainstream Organic Association. And it's the first time we are working all together, trying to have one voice, because we want have some space in the Milan Charter, which is the document at the end of the EXPO will be presented to the United Nations, saying what all people in EXPO think about sustainability and development. So I wish you a substantive debate, and so we can start. Thank you for being here. I suggest English-speaking people to collect headphones, because some intervent may be in Italian.
So the organic week is over.
So we have all the speakers on stage now, so I will begin. I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us here for the start for the first day of the Organic Week. As Marcus indicated, we are in the International Year of Soils. We have a banner over there. So in 2013, the United Nations at their General Assembly decided that December 5th would be the International Day of Soils, and that 2015 would be the International Year of Soils. So today's session will focus specifically on that, soils, and we have 6 speakers here who will elaborate on that topic from different angles, sharing their experiences, sharing their thoughts, and also sharing their work on that. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Denise Coutinho. I'm Communications Manager at IFOAM Organics International. And without further delay, I would like to start with a short video clip focusing on the Green Revolution. It's part of the Symphony of Soils. So that was a video launched in 2012 that explores a bit the relationship, the interconnectivity of soils with the rest of the planet and different elements. So we'll begin with that. Thank you.
For most of the 10,000 years of the history of agriculture, nitrogen had been the most important limiting factor in productivity.
The way my grandfather farmed is he'd break up a piece of prairie and he would grow wheat and oats usually, sometimes corn, until the nutrients were depleted, and then he would break up a new piece of prairie. That's not ecological farming, but that's sort of slash and burn farming.
It wasn't until the early 20th century that we were able to increase the production and the introduction of nitrogen fertilizers through a process called the Haber-Bosch reaction. Haber and Bosch in Germany were looking for a better explosive during the war and came up with this way of breaking up the bonds of nitrogen in the air and turning that nitrogen into an explosive form that is also a plant available form. So out of the chemistry of war and bombs came out the first synthetic nitrogen fertilizer.
Then what happened was, as the Second World War came to a close and the fertilizers became available on a very inexpensive basis, that was just at the time when there was a limited amount of new prairie to go to. And so it came as the saving grace. And I still remember my father, the first time he started using fertilizer, and he saw the response that he got from that, and he said, we could never farm without fertilizer again.
As we increase the amount of nitrogen input to natural ecosystems, what is the response of the ecosystem itself to that?
I mean, my father, before he started applying fertilizers, he went to our county extension agent, he went to every farmer whose judgment he trusted, and his single question was, is this going to hurt my land?
The use of nitrogen fertilizer removed the limiting factor from the agricultural ecosystem. So, of course, it yielded a very high increase in productivity. But it also produced very high demands on the soil. Demands in the form of increased pesticide use, the demand for other nutrients, the demand for very high inputs of water and fossil fuels through all kinds of ways, especially through the mechanization of the agricultural ecosystem. All these elements put together composed a regime that is called the Green Revolution. And the poster children for the Green Revolution were Mexico and India.
As a child, when I used to walk into the fields, I used to feel the soil was so soft and nice. And whenever I came home in the holidays, I found it becoming sick day by day. I didn't know anything can be done without chemicals. my father was one of the pioneers of the Green Revolution. He visited the Louisiana University, got the new seeds and everything. He did according to the book, what the university and the chemical guys had preached. And now here I am trying to undo the wrong done by the Green Revolution. This is the wheat crop which I have been growing since the last 27 years. But as a chemical farmer, I used to have a bumper crop, very nice crops, maybe 2 tons of wheat per acre. But now, the first year I stopped using the chemicals, it went down just half a ton. What happened was that the soil was sick. It was waterlogged, it was compact due to heavy machineries, and I was not replacing the carbon, the biomass which I should have. Weeds were a problem. They used to overshadow all my crop. But this year you will see the weeds are lower than the wheat. And these weeds are basically, they are wild clover, which are a legume. The legumes are the lungs of the soil. So they catch hold of the free nitrogen and feed it back. Nitrogen is the key to a happy soil and happy plants growing. And nitrogen also breaks down the carbon material which we plow in our fields.
There are 2 very fundamentally different outcomes that agriculture can bring to a soil. It can improve it or degrade it. Agriculture is not necessarily destructive. And the difference depends on how one treats the soil.
A short introduction and some thoughts on soil, setting the tone for today's session, and I would like to invite Tobias Bandel. Tobias Bandel is the Managing Director of Soil and More, and he's here to share his thoughts on ecological and economic necessity. And I would ask Tobias to come and join us here, and I suspect that his presentation is ready. Yep.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's a great honor to be here. I would like to share with you in the next couple of minutes some ideas, some experiences, some impressions which we gained as Soil and More. We are a small consulting firm over the last 8 years, not weeks, that would be a bit short, 8 years, being busy in trying to utilize biomass, valuable materials which other people consider or call waste. We try to transform this biomass into fertile soil through composting. What we actually experience there is written in the title, that what people call today sustainability, which is often abused as a marketing gag, that this is actually not a marketing gag or just something nice to have. It is a necessity, and not only for the planet. I mean, not only what we normally call, yeah, that's nice for the climate and for the soil and for the water, but also economically. And I might repeat myself over the next 15-20 minutes a few times, but I really want to stress that I truly believe that organic or sustainable food is not too expensive. It's not something for a rich elite. It's actually the economically more viable option. And actually, conventional food is too cheap, because they forget half of the cost, and I'm coming back to that. So if we read the United Nations Synthesis Report on agriculture at the crossroads, sort of the summary is business as usual is no option. Why is that? You have the wrong version. Denise, they have the wrong version. Okay, that looks better. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so this is a video. Okay, what you see there is a training we did for small-scale farmers in Kenya, tea growers, about 10,000 of them. They suffered from a productivity decrease of about 30–40%. Their tea gardens haven't seen anything but urea, DAP, ammonia nitrate, etc. for the last decades. So their soil is basically dead, the structure is lost. So what you have seen there is the water they put into there basically goes through. And it's not only the water, but it's fertilizers, it's their labor, their sweat, their money. It drops out. If you don't care about soil, you're losing money. The next video I'm showing you is not from a fantastic place somewhere else. It's just around the corner, because besides growing tea, all these small-scale farmers have a little vegetable garden where they don't get consultants, where they just follow their intuition and their logic, where they grow in a crop rotation, cabbage, corn, some veggies. They have some leaf litter which they incorporate. They hardly apply any fertilizer because nobody told them to do so. And I just went around the house, grabbed a handful of soil from there and did the same exercise. Will you please?
Kwa hivyo ndio sasa tunataka kujaribu. Unaona maji? Unaona hakuna maji? Haimwagiki? Labda hii yenye inatoka na kando, lakini na hapa hakuna.
So, no system is perfect. There is a little bit of leakage also, but the difference is obvious. So it's not terribly scientific, but still it's true. And people were crazy about and asked, okay, where can we buy this soil? Where can we buy this compost? No, it's there. Just do your thing. Just do what you believe in, and don't, without killing my own business case, don't always listen to consultants. Now, the title was Sustainability or Organic Farming is an ecologic and economic necessity. So what I just showed you is, if you're not focusing, if you're not caring about your soil, basically you're losing money. What drops out of your soil is inputs. The FAO published a couple of months ago a report which they compiled on the basis of food waste, but where they basically assessed over 3 years something they call full cost or true cost. So they said, okay, if we really look into an agricultural system and see, okay, what is the real cost of food production? Maybe the cost structure of some products would look different, because if water pollution would be considered in the cost calculation, some products would be much more expensive. Same for soil, same for diseases, etc. So it's a long report which I won't go through, but I just want to highlight one part, which is soil, where they estimated the cost of soil. So what they said is that more or less, give or take, based on the recommendations from a few hundred stakeholders around the world and experts, they estimate the cost of topsoil to be about 20 to 25 euros. That maybe doesn't sound too much, yeah, but if you do a little equation and you say, okay, there is some models like the universal soil loss equation, it's not very uncommon that an intensively farmed area would lose up to like between 20 and 100 tons of topsoil per hectare a year. Even in Germany, where I'm from, there is some beautiful dairy farms in Bavaria, they lose more than 20 tons of topsoil per hectare a year. So if you do that equation, there's actually a societal cost of 100,000 euros for this 100 hectare farm. And nobody pays for that yet. Well, it's not nobody, because actually we already pay for it via taxes, sometimes. Yeah? For instance, in Germany, the civil workers, they come at the end of the year with huge excavators and dig out all the topsoil from the rivers and put it back on the slope. So this is real cost. It just doesn't appear in the price of milk yet. But the way around, if you look to farming systems who actually do care about soil, who invest already today and already yesterday into the soil, preventing erosion, improving and increasing soil organic matter, they avoid those costs. They maybe even build soil, so there is a net benefit. It's a little still sort of theoretical discussion, but still it's real, because if there is water polluted, somebody's got to pay it. Yeah? And it's not outsourceable to the next generation. It's happening right now, right here, for soil, for water, for biodiversity, for everything. So let's look at some agriculture systems. Typical monoculture system, they grow, for instance, corn. So there is a lot of inputs in the first year, second year. Again, corn, the topsoil maybe looks a little bit different. It started to deteriorate. More inputs are needed because the leaching is more leaching into the groundwater. Some CO2 emissions because the topsoil starts to erode from all the chemical inputs. There is more and more carbon dioxide emissions. Looking to the third year, topsoil maybe is, I'm exaggerating now a little bit, but topsoil might be even further eroded. More inputs are needed because more leaching, more erosions. So we all know that food prices go up, as we see on this curve. But if we consider this increased CO2 emissions, this increased water pollution, and the loss of topsoil, the actual cost, the full cost, the real cost might be much higher. We don't know, and I don't care today if it's like 30% higher or 60% higher, but it's very important for us to realize it is higher. So what we call today cheap is actually not cheap. Now if we look to a different system to make it fast, which is sort of integrated with crop rotations, maybe even with animals, ideally if you're a good farmer, and you're not a good farmer just because you have a certificate at the wall, you need to be a good farmer and really believe in what you do and have best practices. But if you are a good farmer following organic or biodynamic practices, then you actually might have not a footprint, but a good print. So maybe you're doing actually good to the environment. You're increasing the sequestration rate, you're building soil, you're having a cyclic economy, and actually your current accounting is actually too high because a full or real accounting actually would show that you are creating a benefit and you're not creating a cost to the society. This is still a long way for us to learn on how to think this. How would we understand the market, or consumer understand the market, if we go into a shop and we find organic products much cheaper than conventional ones? So maybe the price is not, only the price is maybe not the right tool. So we need to understand, and I come to this on my last slide, we need to understand on how to reevaluate food. It's not just about input, output today, but we must look at agriculture as a system. We must rediscover the culture part in agriculture. It's not just a business. So an agriculture system, or an approach which is really truly economically viable and socially and ecological, but I want to focus on economically, is a system which considers as many as possible externalities and try to harmonize them and trying to avoid harm, to minimize trade-offs to the system. To not just focus on climate because maybe water might be affected. We have to look at a holistic system, and a holistic approach, and try to optimize the outputs. So key ingredients from what we saw is diversified crop rotation, cover crops, compost, of course, mixed systems, because it makes sense for the environment and for the people. And as I mentioned before, it's all nice and the farmers have quite some homework to be done, but it's about everybody of us in this room. Every 7 billion people. We need to re-evaluate food. Something went fundamentally wrong in the last decades. If the liter of milk increases by 1 cent, there's huge revolution and everybody thinks we're gonna die. But and people say we don't have enough money, and you know, food is too expensive. But 5 minutes later, they would go to a multimedia store and buy a flat screen with an integrated hair dryer for $100 extra, which nobody needs. But then obviously money is no problem. So maybe, as I said, price cost is very singular sort of aspect. So it's really about the comprehensive value. Somehow we need to upgrade, talking airline language, we need to upgrade the status of food. Because something is wrong if a flat screen is worth more than food. So, I don't know how, but young people play a big role. We need to rediscover agriculture. It's great, it's cool, it's sexy, and it's really great to grow your own food. So agriculture is one part, but as consumers, we need to learn this, we need to reevaluate food. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite people who have a question to Tobias. We have a few minutes, questions and answers. Anyone, any thoughts, any that were triggered by Tobias's presentation? No? No? There's one?
For the translators, I think I need to speak to my... Yes, I'm happy to be the icebreaker. I know how it feels as a moderator to get the first question. But I would like to pick up on what you said at the end about the youth. And I see the youth going two ways. I see the slow food youth, I see the young organics, etc. But I also see the youth that is just into brands, that spends now an annual contract, gets a new mobile phone, is eager to pay for iPhone €500, which costs in production €8.50. How do we get this other side on board? Do you have any suggestions? I know you...
Well, I for sure don't have the solution, but what helps me a lot, and when I started, I was young, now I'm very old. When you read newspapers or you go to conferences, you're normally overwhelmed either by this fantastic guys and girls who achieved a lot of things and they give these huge speeches and they say we invested hundreds of millions and now thousands of hectares is green, and I don't know what to think. Wow, so what can I do? Yeah? All the way around, that sort of, it's this massive catastrophe ahead of us, and actually it's not worth doing anyway. Yeah? So I think what is important for us individually, but also in terms of communication, is this aspect of honesty and also of a humble approach. Yeah, to try to break down our huge visions without losing the vision, but bringing it down to a level which we can start implementing next Monday morning with the resources at hand. So make it doable, small steps, you know, if everybody does it. And of course, actually it's 5 to 12, but still there should be this joy and fun factor, not in terms of, you know, being entertained, but it's a great thing to do something good, yeah. And if we can try to find a language that the tasks are not too big, and it's actually not already too late, but say no, you yourself can do something next Monday, and it's actually a great thing to do. It's not simple or not easy if you try to do this, but I think in this whole global sustainability discussion, a little bit of extra honesty and a little bit of extra being humble wouldn't hurt anyway. So, because we are great, we know this, okay? So let's get to work next Monday with what we can do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, there's one.
It's basically touching on the same point, kind of, but for those young farmers or the young youth who wants to become organic farmers, do you have any suggestions on how to make it more cool, or like you said, something that they would like to do? Because from my perspective, I tried it for 1 year, and it is a lot of hard work, and there's not much profit behind it either. It has to be for passion and for love. However, if you are not fortunate enough to have all these funds with your family, there's no way it's sustainable for those young Africa who are only looking to get better iPhone brands or better flat screen TV. So how can we make this a fun, engaging experience, or any community, or if you have any suggestion, I would like to know. Thank you.
Well, again, no solution, but it's a question I have in myself, and I'm faced with every day out there, because it's a huge problem that the whole agriculture sector lost its attractiveness. And sometimes even people like a good friend of us in Darjeeling, farming hundreds of hectares of tea gardens biodynamically, he and his partners invested big time into schools. So all these kids from the farmers who previously worked in the field, they now went to school, and now they want to go to university but don't work at the farm. Yeah, so he realized, well, was it wrong to build schools because now I don't have workers anymore? So it's tricky, yeah, and it's not an easy task. But I know of platforms where specifically young farmers stay in touch and focus specifically on those simple, honest solutions which somebody realized, hey, I know this maybe sounds weird, but I tried it this way and now it sort of works. Yeah, it made my life easier. It's a starting point, but there is media out there is platforms where you can start exchanging. And on my last slide, and Bernhard will also talk about this, there is a campaign called Save Our Soils that also has a fund. And this fund is actually in particular for this to provide easy access to farmers, specifically young farmers, for sort of hands-on experiences, do's and don'ts in organic farming. We need to find out how that works. I know it's tricky. I was a farmer myself in Egypt for some time. It's easier said than done, but I think this group aspect is there. And there is a big movement, and so connection is one thing, but I guess everybody can say something to this during the morning.
Thank you very much. This is all we have time for in terms of questions now in the question and answer round. Just bear in mind that towards the end of the session there will be still the opportunity for more discussion and debate. So if you have questions, just bear with us until then, and then you'll be able to bring them in. The next speaker I would like to invite on stage is Roberto Pinton. So Roberto has a long history of involvement in the organic movement, started off in the cooperative movement from what I see, and is secretary of FederBio's processing and trading members section, so long title. That's Roberto.
Thank you. So, the member of our Action Network. So, I think my presentation is near to the previous one, because the title is Make Soil Succeed. And now I go in Italian. La FAO nel 2015 ha dichiarato il 2015 anno internazionale del suolo. Non so com'è la situazione negli altri paesi europei, ma se io chiedo alle persone che incontro per la strada in Italia se sanno che il 2015 è l'anno italiano del suolo, non ottengo risposte. Eppure, secondo i documenti della FAO, i suoli in salute sono alla base della produzione di alimenti sani, sono il fondamento su cui sono coltivati i vegetali, le fibre e le energie, i prodotti per uso energetico e per uso medicinale, e è un forte sostegno alla biodiversità del pianeta, che ne ospita un quarto, aiutano a combattere il cambiamento climatico, aumentano la resilienza dei nostri sistemi alle inondazioni e alla siccità, e il suolo soprattutto è una risorsa non rinnovabile, quindi va assolutamente preservato se vogliamo averlo nel futuro. Quindi non stiamo parlando di cose leggere, sono cose fondamentali, base, sostegno, aiuta a combattere, migliora, sono tutti temi importanti. Eppure, mentre buona parte degli italiani sanno che c'è il giorno di San Patrizio, tutti gli italiani sanno che c'è il giorno della mamma, magari qualche italiano sa anche che c'è il giorno della marmotta, ma pochi sanno che questo era l'anno del suolo. E se guardiamo quali sono le preoccupazioni dei consumatori, vediamo che a livello mondiale, questa è una ricerca del mese scorso, abbiamo il 46% delle persone è preoccupato per i cambiamenti climatici, il 42% per la instabilità economica nel mondo, 51% negli Stati Uniti, il 41% è preoccupato per le attività della ISIS, 68% negli Stati Uniti, poi c'è il programma nucleare iraniano, gli attacchi cibernetici, il 30% nel mondo è quasi il doppio degli Stati Uniti, le tensioni fra la Russia e i suoi vicini, le tensioni fra la Cina e i suoi vicini. Cosa ci dice questa tabella? Oltre a dirci che gli americani sono preoccupati il doppio degli europei e del resto del mondo su tutti questi temi, che il suolo qua non c'è, l'agricoltura qua non c'è. Perché del cambiamento climatico è facile essere consapevoli, se ne accorge la gente, vede che è caldo, vede che ci sono le trombe d'aria, vede che ci sono i cataclismi. Chi sta in Expo, chi è venuto in Expo in agosto si rende conto che c'è il cambiamento climatico e che c'è il calore che aumenta. La biodiversità, si pensa un po' che è una cosa da foreste tropicali, però è buono, suona bene, quindi diciamo è piacevole, quindi la gente si preoccupa della biodiversità anche se non vicino a casa. Ma del suolo assolutamente la gente non si preoccupa, perché il suolo è una faccenda da agricoltori. Non è una cosa che si può presentare in televisione. Se fate un programma in prima serata sul suolo, nessuno lo guarda, tutti cambiano canale, non ha appeal. Eppure noi abbiamo metà dei suoli europei con basso contenuto di sostanza organica, nell'Europa del Sud, che è quella che fornisce ortaggi e frutta al resto d'Europa, ma anche in Francia, in Gran Bretagna, in Germania, e abbiamo un declino della qualità dei suoli perché sta diminuendo la sostanza organica. Negli anni 80 la FAO ha definito la pianura padana, che è questa parte d'Italia dove noi siamo, che era la pianura del fiume Po, fertile, ricca, dove c'è un'agricoltura molto forte e sviluppata, un deserto coltivato a mais. In realtà non era coltivato solo a mais, perché facciamo ogni tanto anche le barbabietole, però diciamo erano mais e barbabietole. E senza sostanza organica. Ormai la pianura padana è una spugna inerte su cui, se non si usano sostanze chimiche di sintesi, non crescerebbe nulla. Noi abbiamo l'80% dei suoli in Italia che hanno una sostanza organica inferiore al 2%, una gran parte inferiore al 1%, e esportiamo ortaggi e frutta in tutto il mondo. Abbiamo una sostanza organica che sta assolutamente scomparendo, non è un problema solo dell'Italia. Abbiamo anche il dato semplice da verificare, basta leggere i numeri dell'Istituto di Statistica Italiano. Noi abbiamo, nell'ultimo anno per cui ci sono statistiche, 75.000 tonnellate di anticrittogamici usati nell'agricoltura italiana, il che, dividendolo per il numero degli italiani, fa 1,3 kg a testa. Abbiamo 27.000 tonnellate di insetticidi in Italia, che sono quasi mezzo chilo per ogni italiano. Abbiamo 19.000 tonnellate di altri pesticidi, che sono più di 300 grammi a testa. Abbiamo in totale quasi 150.000 tonnellate di pesticidi di sintesi all'anno scaricati sui suoli italiani. Sono 2,5 kg di media per ogni italiano. Chiaramente non rimangono tutti come residui sui prodotti, in parte volatilizzano, in parte percolano, ma purtroppo in gran parte rimangono nel suolo. E abbiamo anche qualcosa come 5 miliardi di chili di fertilizzanti di sintesi usati in Italia, ed è la cifra impressionante di oltre 90 kg per ogni italiano. In totale sono 5 miliardi e mezzo di chili di prodotto chimico versato sui terreni agricoli italiani. il che comporta che su un ettaro si usano circa 400 kg di sostanze chimiche di sintesi fra pesticidi e fertilizzanti ogni anno, e per ogni chilo di prodotto vegetale realizzato in Italia si parla di 50 grammi di fertilizzanti, di sostanze chimiche di sintesi. Queste sono informazioni che il consumatore non ha assolutamente, e non parliamo di quello che vuol dire erosione, perché quando non abbiamo sostanza organica nel suolo andiamo incontro a problemi di erosione, non parliamo dell'impatto sugli animali selvatici. Questo, diciamo, sono i risultati dei neonicotinoidi che erano proposti come sostenibili, e sono sostenibili, ma bisogna andare a spiegare alle api che sono sostenibili, per non parlare di quelli che sono i problemi di residui sugli alimenti. Quindi più che l'anno internazionale del suolo, noi dobbiamo tenere presente che abbiamo alcuni decenni in cui abbiamo avuto la devastazione assolutamente del nostro suolo, e proprio il disinteresse assoluto per il nostro suolo. Ora, io non sono un agronomo, non sono un agricoltore, mi occupo di economia. Il motivo per cui ho scelto di lavorare negli anni 80 nel settore biologico è proprio perché lavoravo nel campo dell'economia, e il mio ragionamento era che nessuna impresa può dilapidare il proprio patrimonio. Mi sembrava una cosa folle, non si può ragionare solamente sul conto economico, su qual è il dividendo che ho per questi 3 mesi, devo guardare qual è il patrimonio che la mia azienda potrà avere nel futuro, se voglio che la mia azienda abbia un futuro e possa distribuire dividendi e dare lavoro anche nel futuro. Per cui ogni azienda deve assolutamente tutelare i suoi asset strategici, il suo conto patrimoniale, e l'agricoltura convenzionale sta devastando, sta distruggendo il suo patrimonio, il suo capitale, sta andando verso la bancarotta. Cioè, questo è un dato assolutamente incontrovertibile, un dato di fatto. E quali sono gli alleati che noi possiamo avere per cambiare le cose? Le organizzazioni degli agricoltori convenzionali, forse da qualche parte nel resto dell'Europa può darsi, tendo ad escluderlo in Italia. Noi abbiamo organizzazioni convenzionali che hanno fatto pagare all'Italia multe europee perché non sono stati in grado di adeguarsi, pur se avevano 10 anni di preavviso, alle dimensioni delle gabbie e delle galline, oppure dopo che hanno sforato i limiti della direttiva nitrati e continuano ancora a chiedere la possibilità di spandere più nitrati di quelli che sono consentiti dalle normative europee in continua deroga, pur avendo 10 anni di anticipo per potersi realizzare. Dubito che dalle organizzazioni degli agricoltori convenzionali si possa avere un contributo. Possiamo averlo da parte dei legislatori e da chi si occupa di normative, dubito anche questo, perché l'effetto e il peso delle lobby e della politica del business as usual è troppo pesante. Quindi chi è il nostro alleato? È il consumatore, è la gente, e quindi dobbiamo avere una campagna proprio straordinaria di informazione sui consumatori per spiegare cos'è il suolo. Non c'è solo l'ISIS, non c'è solamente il cyberattack e non c'è solamente il problema dell'Ucraina, è un problema che avranno i loro figli, i loro nipoti, che hanno loro, che ha il loro paese. Stiamo devastando il suolo su cui poggiamo i piedi, e quindi dobbiamo intervenire. Abbiamo la fortuna che il nostro mercato è in crescita, che alcune risorse economiche sono disponibili. Dobbiamo riuscire a coordinare una campagna cercando cofinanziatori pubblici e privati per spiegare finalmente al pubblico queste questioni. Non è un business per agricoltori, e l'unico modo per acquisire sensibilità è spiegare queste cose e rendere il suolo sexy. Grazie.
Thank you, Roberto, for that. So very passionate position on what needs to be done and what isn't being done as well. Also some negativity I sense there. Reactions from the audience. I see some, is that a raised hand? No? Any questions in English or Italian? We have the translation services. No? Yes, one?
Sì, ho apprezzato molto, soprattutto perché ha fornito dei dati. Volevo chiederle se questi dati sono pubblicati o se si può avere accesso, se c'è una bibliografia in merito. Grazie.
I dati non sono pubblicati, ma sono facilmente desumibili dall'Istat. L'Istituto Italiano di Statistica pubblica ogni anno i quantitativi di fitofarmaci suddivisi per le diverse categorie e di fertilizzanti e pubblica anche la quantità di ettari che sono coltivati in Italia, quindi basta fare una semplice divisione. Noi comunque è da anni che diffondiamo queste informazioni. Alcuni anni fa addirittura il ministro dell'agricoltura italiano ci chiese: ma dove avete preso questi dati? Spiegate. L'Istituto Italiano di Statistica, cioè non devo essere io, associazione di produttori biologici, che spiega a un ministro come sta andando la sua agricoltura. Basta che il ministro chieda al suo istituto di statistica, perché fa impressione sentire che ogni italiano porta sulle spalle 90 kg di fertilizzanti e pesticidi, oppure porta nella borsetta ogni signora 2,5 kg di insetticidi e anticrittogamici. Però è il dato di fatto. E attenzione, questo è il dato italiano, ma se prendiamo i dati della Francia, della Spagna, della Grecia, della Germania, non è molto diverso, la differenza è di qualche 100 grammi. La situazione è drammatica ovunque. Noi chiaramente ci preoccupiamo di spiegare il dato ai consumatori italiani.
Dal momento che molto spesso si ragiona solamente di economia e non si pensa alla salute, non si pensa al futuro dei nostri figli e dei nostri nipoti, volevo chiedere, dal punto di vista strettamente economico, l'agricoltura biologica è vantaggiosa e competitiva rispetto all'agricoltura convenzionale oppure no? Questa è la prima domanda. Seconda domanda, facciamo l'esempio della pianura padana, che lei ha detto che è un deserto. Poniamo che ci siano politiche radicali di riconversione di questo territorio al biologico. Quanti anni occorrerebbero per ritornare ad avere un suolo ricco di materiale organico e quindi un suolo più naturale, diciamo, per semplificare? Grazie.
Rispondo per la prima parte, quella economica, perché come l'ho detto prima non sono un agronomo, quindi rischierei di dare delle indicazioni sul tempo che ci vuole, che non sono esatte, però i colleghi al tavolo sono sicuramente in grado di dare una risposta tecnicamente ineccepibile. Dal punto di vista economico tutto sta a capire qual è l'economia a cui lei si riferisce. Se l'obiettivo è quello di distribuire i dividendi per i prossimi 3 mesi, dobbiamo verificare la situazione. Se l'obiettivo è avere un patrimonio che le consenta di distribuire i dividendi per alcuni secoli ancora, sicuramente è vincente l'agricoltura biologica. Il problema non è che l'agricoltura biologica dà prodotti che costano troppo, è l'agricoltura convenzionale e l'attuale sistema di produzione che dà prodotti che costano poco. In Italia alcune settimane or sono morti dei braccianti che lavoravano in nero, braccianti stranieri che lavoravano in nero nelle campagne della Puglia per raccogliere pomodori che dovevano essere economici, dovevano costare molto poco, quindi si prendevano braccianti esteri, si facevano lavorare come schiavi, avendo un prodotto che costava poco e il consumatore lo paga poco ed è contento. Quando il consumatore chiede un prodotto che costa poco, chiede questo. In Germania non hanno le coltivazioni di pomodori, hanno gli allevamenti di maiale e la trasformazione del maiale. Avere salsicce che costino poco in Germania a costo di avere gli immigrati dalla Romania o dalla ex Jugoslavia tenuti come schiavi, se ne è occupata non solo la stampa tedesca, anche quella italiana, non è diciamo, dal punto di vista etico, ma dal punto di vista economico complessivo un business vincente. Quindi diciamo, quando lei mi dice se la salsiccia biologica costa di più di una convenzionale e però nel frattempo ha pagato correttamente chi ci lavorava, non costa di più, costa quello che deve costare una salsiccia.
Okay, no more questions. We will move on to the next speaker, John Yu. I'd like to introduce you to John Yu, who is an ecologist and filmmaker with years of experience. Some of his movies include Hope in a Changing Climate, Green Gold, Emerging in a Changing Climate, and his presentation today will be on the art of healing.
Hello? Yes. Well, so thank you. I have to be grateful to the organizers for having me come and to all of you for joining this. I also have to thank a lot of people because over the last 20 years I've been able to continue to study this. But I didn't start by coming from the organic food movement or agriculture or academia. I started as a journalist, and I worked originally for the CBS News Bureau at the time of normalization of relations between China and the United States. And I worked for 3 years for Radio Televisione Italiana with a wonderful man, Eladio Fiore. And I also worked with the German state television for a few years. But the stories that I covered as a young person were the rise of China from poverty and isolation, and the Tiananmen tragedy, and the collapse of the Soviet Union. So these were very large geopolitical events, and it affected me because at first I thought I was really doing something important. But by some time I came to believe that human beings are a little bit arrogant, and the leaders and the events which we think are so important are really not that important. And as I watched in China, the pollution levels began to increase. And in 1995, the World Bank asked me to film the baseline study for the Lus Plateau Watershed Rehabilitation Project. And Lus, this was the cradle of Chinese civilization. And this is called the Lus Plateau because of the geomorphology. And I'm very worried about what Roberto said, because he said no TV will show the films about soil in prime time. That's a terrible thing, because I've made several films about soil. But this is where the Chinese race began. So when you dig around in there, you might find some very interesting things, because all of the ancient early dynasties were based in this place. But by 1995, when the World Bank asked me to go here, by the way, this is to the southwest, so it's a perfectly functional forested system. But it turned to this. So how did this happen? When I first went there, this was a completely ruined landscape. And it made me consider, what is going on here? How did this happen? And I became obsessed and fascinated by what I was finding, because this was the birthplace of the largest ethnic group on the planet, but it was fundamentally ecologically destroyed. And I needed to know more about this. So it began a 20 years, I left journalism and became a researcher. And for 20 years I've been studying this, and there are results. And what we found was that it's possible to understand the development trajectory that leads to ecological collapse and what causes civilizations to fail. And it's interesting because we are on, at a global scale, the trajectory which causes the civilization to end because we collapse our ecosystem. But what we found was that when the Chinese began to develop, they reduced biodiversity. Then they reduced biomass, the amounts of vegetative cover, and then they reduced the accumulation of organic materials as each generation of life dies and gives up its body. And this alters gas exchange by changing photosynthesis. This massively alters the soil fertility by altering the ability for microbial communities to release nutrients from geologic materials, and also changes the ability to recycle the nutrients. And it massively changes infiltration and retention of rainfall, which is the natural regulation of hydrology, weather, and climate. And every civilization that followed this trajectory had the same outcome. So it's not simply studying the Chinese history, it's studying human history. So is it inevitable that human beings destroy their habitat? If you've ever been on a gorilla trek, you'll find that close relatives of ours foul their nest. It's grotesque. Are we gorillas? Or are we emerging and evolving? Now, interestingly, the project was the restoration of the Luz Plateau. So I was very fortunate because I didn't only study how the system degrades, I was able to study how you restore ecological function. And it took quite a long time to do research, to understand what needed to be done. It had to be communicated to large numbers of people. It had to transition them from behaviors which were negative. And it had to be holistic. So it included large numbers of differing activities that were all connected. So in the beginning, they made physical interventions to infiltrate the water. But this quickly became biophysical as the water was retained in the system, then more and more vegetation appeared. And this vegetation was both agricultural and natural. So it's not simply that we're talking about productivity in agriculture, we're talking about ecological function. And we've also somehow in the United Nations and other places, we've made a mistake because we're talking about ecosystem services. These are not services. These are functional systems. They're the basis of the atmosphere. They're the basis of soil fertility, and they're the basis of the natural regulation of water and weather and climate. And we now have a tremendous amount of knowledge about how this works. And we know that it's possible to rehabilitate large-scale damaged ecosystems. It is unnecessary to accept degradation. This doesn't mean that you can go ahead and degrade and somehow fix it later. It means we need to restore all degraded landscapes on the planet as rapidly as possible. In 1995, this is what the Loess Plateau looked like. The next picture will transition to 2009, when we made a film called Hope in a Changing Climate that was shown at the Copenhagen COP15. Again, we will look at another space. This is 1995, and there is virtually no vegetation. For 1,000 years, this has been destroyed, and now it's functional. If you carry this development trajectory forward for 200 years or 500 years, the canopy will be 50 meters high. You'll have enormous carbon soils. You will restore ecological function. Rivers will flow that are dry. Soils will be fertile. Productivity will change. This is what we learned. And what I saw in this made me want to go all over the world, and because I wanted to know, is this unique to China? Is it because they have a strong government and the people will do what they're told, or is this something which can be done all over the world through participation? I would agree in some ways the leaders are not leading us at the moment, and the focus has been on the wrong things. Because what I saw is that the real value in the earth and in life is ecological function. And when you study economics, in the GDP, ecological function is 0. This cannot be true. Something is fundamentally false at the core of human development. And in going around the world, I found that there's all sorts of methodologies for doing restoration. They work very well. This is dune stabilization. You can stop the sands. The Sahelian region, the Middle East, the Mediterranean, Central Asia have been massively degraded. There are billions of hectares of landscapes that can be restored, and we know how to do this. And it's not vastly expensive, but it has an enormous return. But the return is not simply in money as we see it, because the money that we're looking at now is false. It has no real basis. It's an abstraction. It's coming from extraction, from manufacturing, from trade, and from debt. And this type of money is not real. This type of money, this is true value. Soil fertility, water, the atmosphere, climate regulation, that should be the basis of money. If that's the basis of money, all human actions will go to protect the systems that we want, that we need. And every human being has a role to play. And some of the historical mistakes of the past can be addressed. We don't have to accept degraded states. When human rights are taken away from people around the world, that's degradation. That's what causes poverty. That's what causes deserts. And if we get this in our mind, what we're seeing is a change in consciousness, a change in understanding what is real, and not focusing on shiny objects, the latest brand or whatever. We don't need those things. And we're turning everyone into consumers. And to become a consumer is a loss of your humanity. Let's not be consumers. Let's be human beings. Let's evolve to the next stage in human evolution. Let's understand that nonviolence is more powerful than violence. This is what we can see from Gandhi, from Nelson Mandela, from Martin Luther King. These are the important messages. And to summarize what I've seen, it's possible to completely transform areas like the Mediterranean, which have been dehydrated for long periods of time, do not have to be dehydrated. They can be rehydrated. But you have to be conscious of this. You have to have the entire population. You have to have the policy decisions. You have to have the participation of everyone. You need a consciousness change, a paradigm shift. And if you have that, it's a new day. It's a new era in human history. This is where we have to go, because we have 7.5 billion people on the planet. And we're adding 1 billion people every 12 years. We need to do this. And if we do this, it will have a great effect. We'll have a great effect for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, for our countries, for our economy, because we can really grow this way. You can't grow with infinite use of finite resources, but you can grow enormously in terms of biomass, in terms of organic materials, and in terms of natural ecological function. And this is where good, healthy, organic food comes from. This means we don't have to have chemicals, because we're learning how to live together with nature. And we're finding that these systems, these natural systems, are beautiful. They're not scary. They're lovely. And they teach us what it is that we need to learn. When you go into a natural system, when you meet indigenous people who for millennia protected their natural resources, you don't find deserts, you find fantastic rushing rivers and tremendous biodiversity. And they know which of these are good to heal the cut on your arm or your stomach ailment, because they've lived this way. And this isn't just for human beings, this is for every other species on the planet. We have a responsibility not simply to take care of ourselves, we have a responsibility to see that we're part of a whole enormous organism. And every part of the earth, we have to look at this on a planetary scale. It's different in every place, but it's also the same. Biodiversity, biomass, and accumulated organic matter are the determinants, and they're the indicators for sustainability and survival. And all over the earth, they're perfect systems. There's nothing wrong with the earth. It's human beings who have perverted what is there and looked at the shiny objects, thought that they were better than everything else and that they could do whatever they wanted. But the fact is, you can't. You breathe air. You drink water. You eat food. And you are in a symbiotic relationship with every other thing on earth. So we need to understand this, and it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Thanks.
Some stunning images there. questions. We have time for 2 questions for John before moving on. No?
Nobody?
Yeah?
Just to follow up on the leadership point, because how you get this paradigm shift. What do you think it would take for leadership in the way that you've described? I mean, we can see why it might happen in China, but how do you get it to happen in the rest of the world?
Actually, I think that the concept of leadership may be slightly overrated. What I've come to believe is that we need a paradigm shift, and that this is a consciousness change. I would look at it similar to flat Earth, round Earth. So the leaders in the flat Earth movement would create laws and institutions and actually persecute anybody who said the Earth is round. But this is, so the leaders were telling you that you had to maintain something which is false. And I think that truth, it's just true. So it's interesting when you have truth, because it's different. It's not trying to market something. It's not trying to. You can pause that if you want to. It's not trying to sell you on something. You need to, decide for yourself. You have free will. You have choice. And the fact is, if we get collective consciousness to the tipping point, probably about 20% of the population, that understands that wealth comes from ecological function, and that shiny objects, more and more production, more and more marketing, more and more sales is not real wealth. Real wealth is clean air, clean water, clean food, time with your family. This changes. We need to move into a new paradigm. In the existing paradigm, we all have to go to work for 60 hours a week and go to our cubicles and get in traffic and all that. You don't need that at all. We don't need it. We just need to redefine wealth. If we understand, and not really redefine wealth, but acknowledge that real wealth is in the ecological function, and make that the basis of money. If that happens, then we have made an economic system which incentivizes you to restore ecological function. Every human being. And it also says, by the way, somebody in Mali who doesn't manufacture anything and doesn't buy and sell things is not necessarily poor. They're not poor. They're only poor because we define wealth and the economy in terms of extraction, manufacturing, and trade. The fact is, in Mali, there are 14 million people in an area of 1.2 million square kilometers, twice the size of France, the population of Los Angeles. And that area has the most incredible hydrological pump, which regulates the global hydrology. If you look at the Niger River coming out, floods the inner Niger Delta in Mali up to 6 meters every year and then recedes every year. Every year. What is that? Look at NASA's satellite imagery and you see it's the water supply between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. This is the water which regulates the Earth's environment. What is that worth? Climate change is our biggest problem? What is the most incredible hydrological pump that regulates the Earth's hydrology and climate? What's it worth? They're the poorest people on Earth, according to the United Nations Development Statistics. It's ridiculous. We're in a false situation. We have to get out of that false situation because you won't get another outcome. So I don't think it's leaders. It's consciousness. It's a new paradigm. It's understanding what's real and making that so 20% of the population get real.
Thank you, John. Okay, this one, great.
I'd just like to make a small comment in support of what John has just been saying. I think we can start with a language shift. You're talking about African farmers, and the language is always about subsistence farming, a term I detest. I think generally they're trying to do self-sufficiency, not just with their farming, but in their management of their resources. I work with an international development agency, and every day I see project proposals coming in that need to go to high-level donors of our own governments and of the EU, which talk about graduating these farmers from subsistence to commercial. And, you know, it's really nice to see agro-economists in the room, because we already have lots of data. In the world, it tells us that going commercial doesn't mean necessarily wealthy or better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you for the questions also. The next three speakers will talk about communication-related activities to do with soil. We'll have Helen Browning, who is not only the Chief Executive of Soil Association, but also a cattle farmer. And then we'll have two more speakers that I'll introduce in a bit. But before I give the floor to Helen, we'll have a short introductory movie clip by the United Nations International Year of Soil that they've used to promote this year. So I would ask to have that played briefly.
Unlike our previous speakers, fantastic presentation just now. I've only got 3 slides, and when I walked in this morning, Denise said, "You've only got 3 slides." And does that mean your talk is going to be about 30 seconds? But I prefer just to talk through some of the things that we're doing, rather than bamboozle you with too many PowerPoints. Now I'm going to start just by reflecting on why we're called the Soil Association. And I don't know how well you know us in Italy. I mean, we're a UK-based charity, but with tentacles around the globe. We do particularly forest certification around the globe, as well as some agricultural. But you probably do know us as a certifier. But we're also a membership charity, working on a lot of programs in schools and hospitals, and working obviously with farmers, not just as as organic farmers, as certified organic farmers, but trying to change the way all of farming is being done in the UK and further afield. So we have a really broad range of work activities, and some of those I'm going to touch on today. But if I, as a fundraiser, had been given £1 for every time somebody said to me, why are you called the Soil Association? Why don't you change your name? Because, you know, soil, nobody gets soil in America. They think soil is disgusting. Why don't you change the way, what you're called? And we've just been through a sort of brand review. And that challenge came up again and again as we started to look at how we wanted to present ourselves to the world for the next 100 years. But I feel it's absolutely critical that we embrace our soil and our earthy origins, and that we celebrate this neglected topic rather than back away from it because the public doesn't get it today. Our job is to help the public get it, not to deny our fundamental roots, because the roots of the organic movement and the roots of the Soil Association are absolutely in the soil. So after 70 years, well, it's our 70th birthday next year, of not really doing campaigning around soils. We've done lots of work around them, of course, with farmers and with others, and organic is all about soil. But we've always felt that going public on this stuff is in the too difficult box. And yet this year, the opportunity provided by the UN Year of Soils and the fact that we're coming out with our new branding has made us determined to put soils on the map with the public as well as with policymakers and with farmers. How do we get this thing to me? Thank you. Should check these things out beforehand. There we go. Oh, yes. So we have launched not just a year's campaign around soils, but we have a sort of work program for at least 2 years, and hopefully for longer, with a whole host of different dimensions. And I suppose there are 3 really big audiences for our campaigning work around soils. There's obviously policymakers, because we do have to influence them if we're going to change the framework in which to make it more possible for our soils to be looked after well. We're obviously working with farmers to change practice on the ground, but we're also much more public-facing with this than we've ever been before. And over the next 2 years, we are shedding the spotlight on different aspects of soils at different times. So we started off by publishing a report which covers all of the stuff that you've heard about today already, the degradation issues, the challenge that we have, but also a good primer, a good basic educational resource for people who are wanting to know more about soils from day one. We just recently published a report too on maize, corn as it's sometimes called, which we know in the UK is leading to massive soil degradation. It's a very shallow-rooted, wide-space crop that's harvested late in the year, and more of it is being grown, partly to feed anaerobic digestion plants, so for biogas. And so we are extremely worried about the exponential growth in maize. And when you see this map of the UK, and you see the areas where maize is being grown extensively, you can also see the soil eroding into our rivers and into the sea from those areas. It's a massive problem. And we need policymakers to be really thinking differently about maize, encouraging better practice, of course, but also stopping it being used as a greening crop within the CAP and that sort of thing. We're researching a new report on the pesticides' impact on soils too. So understanding, which I don't think there's been that much work done on, just what we do know about how pesticides affect the microbiology and the functioning of soils. We're going to be looking at the breadbasket of the UK as a 4th topic. Our fenlands, which were largely peat. You've got a picture of them somewhere here. Yes, see that road going through. The roads now in the fenlands are about 5 metres higher than the land, because the erosion of peat has been so severe. And we know that erosion of peat is not only a real problem agriculturally. Those soils which have fed us so well for so long are not functioning nearly as well as they were. But we also know that we're releasing huge amounts of carbon into the atmosphere from those soils. We're going to be working also on soils and trees, on agroforestry, because I think that that it is a really underutilised approach, both to stabilise soils and to rebuild soils, and one that in the UK nobody is looking at extensively at all. We're going to be having a focus on soils and resilience to floods and drought, because that is a crucial area. We've talked a lot about the hydrology and the water holding capacity of high organic matter soils, and trying to make that point really clear and getting policymakers to think about that is going to be crucial. In the run-up to Paris, we're going to be talking about soils and climate change, the sequestration potential. Luckily, our Climate Change Committee are starting to get their heads around soils and recognising the importance of that. And we're going to be talking lastly about soils and human health, which I think will help bring to life some of this story for the public more. We have the meta-analysis that was done by Newcastle last year, which shows that we have evidence now that the way we farm does affect the nutritional quality of our food. And I think that's going to be very important indeed if we're going to engage more and more people in thinking positively about soil and soil health. So we've set ourselves some big targets. Our biggest target, which we worried about quite a bit because it's hard to get the science on exactly what's achievable and exactly how high we should set the bar. But where we've settled is that over the next 20 years we want to see a reversal of the decline in organic matter in UK soils. We want to see them increase by an average of 20% over the next 20 years. So it's good to have, that's probably the most critical indicator of success, the organic matter levels in soils. And so to set a target of 20% in the next 20 years and to really try to keep policymakers and farmers focused on that is crucial. For farmers, that's going to mean that they're going to start measuring organic matter content. So we're encouraging farmers to look at soil testing, to measuring, to be feeding in the data so that we can start to see what techniques we're using and what impacts they're having on different soil types, because every soil is different and the approach you take on every soil type needs to be targeted quite specifically. So we need to know more, we need to build a great data set which actually helps us do this more efficiently. And in terms of the public, we're going to be talking more about, obviously, raising awareness generally, helping the public to understand the beauty of soil. What we need and what we think we might have is somebody who brings soils to life in the way that Brian Cox, if you know him, has brought astrology to life for people. We need to be able to have our celebrities talking about soil knowledgeably, bringing soil microorganisms into the public eye in the way that we've brought the Milky Way into the public eye. And we need to help the public understand that where they have the opportunity to care for soils themselves, how to do that, but also to understand that by buying organic food, they are inherently supporting better soil care. My third slide. There we go, that one's twice. I don't think it is, haven't I? Why does it work for everybody else? There we go. So I've talked quite a lot about our soils work and the campaign that we're going to be running and how it's going to have a policy and a farmer and a public-facing element. But actually all of our work needs to come back, be anchored in our respect for soil. And in a way, our new branding describes that, with soil there, then plant life, and then there's sort of, a wider environment and people in it. And this infographic, which actually tries to encapsulate the breadth of work that the Soil Association is doing, tries to show those layers too, tries to tie all of our work back into that fundamental of healthy soil, healthy people, healthy planet. So we work a lot with farmers on the ground. We're particularly pleased to be working a lot on supporting farmers to do their own research. A lot of the research that's being done is being done in labs somewhere else. It's all about, in the UK anyway, it's all about high-tech methods. It's all about technology that can be sold. There's very little focus on what it is that farmers need to know on their own farms, in their own environment, what they can do with their own resources. So the Dutch in Future Farming Programme, which has been running for 3 years and is just going into a next phase, is very much about supporting farmers as innovators who are using their own materials and their own knowledge and sharing that knowledge with more and more farmers so that we can have that sort of movement, not just in the organic world actually, because it needs to be broader than that. We need all farmers to be recognising that a lot of the techniques we're using as organic farmers need to be used everywhere. There's too much to do for it just to be the reserve of the 3% of land area in the UK. It needs to be 93% or 99% of people who are using these soil building techniques. So that's a huge part of our work. We're also working a lot, we've talked about young people coming in today. One of the things I'm so encouraged about is we've been running an apprenticeship scheme for the last 5 years or so, and we have a waiting list of over 500 young people who want to come in to organic growing and farming. Our challenge is to find them the opportunities. I think that actually organic farming and organic growing is sexy for young people. We just need to find them the opportunities to get involved. We work a lot, our second sort of layer there, working with what we call food pioneers, people who are actually changing the way we eat. We talk about changing the way we farm, but then we need to talk about changing the way we eat. Because actually, our soil and our wider resource base cannot cope with us eating the way we're currently eating. We know we need to be moving away from an excess of meat and dairy in our diets. And actually, dietary change is one of the things we really need to buy into if we are going to have an organic future for the world, if we're going to have any future for the world. Because if everybody starts eating meat like the Americans eat meat, we will blow up the world. So less but better is what we're always talking about, animals playing their right role in the landscape and in recycling on a farm. And we are working with the public in all sorts of ways to help them think about and actually change the way they eat. Our biggest program with the public, I suppose, has been Food for Life, and some of you might have heard of that. It's been hugely successful in the UK. It started in schools, and it's all about teaching kids how to grow, how to cook, getting them to eat together at lunchtimes without flight trays, changing the food culture in schools, obviously changing the food on their plate. And we developed something called the catering mark, because wherever you go in public sector catering, whether it's schools or hospitals or prisons or care homes or even in workplaces, people are eating very uncertain food. So trying to improve the provenance of where their food's coming from, trying to make sure that it's produced, that it's freshly prepared on the premises, and giving a journey into organic. They're not going to go from terrible fast food into great freshly prepared organic food in one go. But we've developed a catering mark which starts them at bronze, which gets rid of the nasties, and then at silver starts to introduce organic, but also all the other things that are good like fair trade, Freedom Foods, which is a welfare label in the UK, and at gold increases the amount of organic. And has been massively successful. We now have, in the UK, 1.5 million meals a day being served to the catering mark, and over half of those meals are at silver and gold, which means there's organic food being served in schools, in hospitals, in care homes, all around the UK now. And that's a big step forward in a country which actually, unlike much of the rest of Europe, has been very reluctant to embrace the organic message. And then obviously we work with businesses too in our certification and in forestry and in the catering mark. So we're working across all of those layers. But I think I really want to end with the work that we're doing with the public. and how, you know, going back to the point we were talking about just now about how do we get that paradigm shift, we're always trying to find the ways, how do we get people to be more aware, more conscious, and not just to kind of know it intellectually, but to feel it emotionally, because unless we touch people's emotions in what we're doing, I don't think we're going to get that shift in consciousness that I agree we need if we're going to do all the things we could do that are brilliant in this world. And I'll come back to Food for Life for that, because not only do we need to change the food, but we do, if we can get kids growing and visiting farms, I think that is a life-changing experience for them. If the first time a child grows a bean or any crop themselves, I think they start to get that sense of our connection with nature. They start to understand that life and death cycle. And that cycle is what we need to connect people back into. And in urban communities, that's a real challenge. So starting in the classroom and starting to get kids actually planting seeds and getting their hands in the soil, getting soil and food onto the curriculum, is going to be, I think, the way to change the mindset of the next generation. It's slow and painstaking work. It doesn't happen overnight. But if we do want to have a future where we can have the kind of ecology that we've just seen in the film just now, we need to get people, we need to get kids starting to get their hands dirty at a very, very early age. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, for this. Questions from the audience? I have one.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw that the logo was redesigned.
Yes.
So it incorporates the old one, but also features new elements. So what considerations were there when you made that change? And you know, you said that you looked at identity and where the soil should be in the name. What was part of that change?
Well, it was a big debate. I think when when you're looking at trying to represent your organisation and trying to make sure that it feels really relevant to a lot more people, because that's what we want. We want Soil Association Organic to feel relevant to everybody. So we wanted something that actually, it wasn't as hard. We felt that previously we came across, and in all the research, as a bit authoritarian, a bit, people recognise us as a certifier but not as a charity. So we wanted to try and really help people feel a better, stronger, warmer connection with us and the work that we do. And the soil debate was key. And as you'll have seen from our logo, what we've done, instead of backing away from it, is to do the opposite. We've embraced it. We've made it the focal point of what we're about. And that gives us the hook, I think, to talk through these crucial issues. So rather than back off it, we've embraced it, and we've tried to express that fundamental soil, plant, animal, man connection through the visual representation of what the organisation's about. We've kept the old symbol, which is very, very important, and on pack, as a certifier, we're not changing the symbol. Because that, for all our businesses, that was too difficult, and we think we'll cross that bridge another day. But actually, having a really, so keeping that the same, but showing it slightly differently within the logo, I think has helped maintain that connection. But I hope made us feel a bit more accessible. And what do you think? Has it done the trick?
I think it has. I like the colours. I was also wondering about the choice of colours, but it makes it friendlier, more approachable.
Yeah, I think that's what we need. It's trying to get people to sort of see it and remember it a bit more easily. The feedback on the whole has been fantastic. So I'm very relieved about that, because when you change an organisation's kind of presentation, as the chief exec, you can get sacked really easily.
We wouldn't want that. So. I have one more question, unless someone else also wants to say something. With regards to consumer campaigns, with the change logo and this increased friendliness, let's say, in the presentation, will you be focusing on communicating directly with the consumers?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot more on the sort of marketing front, trying to explain organic to people. Many more marketing materials that our licensees can use, getting out there. We can't do big advertising things, but we have a organic trade board in the UK. We're working with them to try and on generic campaigns around organic. But a lot more materials that I think are really attractive and tell the story, the key reasons very clearly, because we know that people need it made quite easy to assimilate. So there's lots more happening on that front. We're still doing a lot of campaigning work around some of the more single issue areas, because again, that's a way to bring people in. So bees have been, the pollinator story has been a really key one for us. A lot of people have got bees in a way that they found it difficult to get organic and some of the more complex ideas, but they can relate to bees. And so I think telling the story through bees and campaigning around the neonicotinoids and other pesticides has been a way of really trying to bring that to life. So the campaigning focus and the marketing focus is still very, very much there. And I think the new brand and the new approach hopefully will help this stick in people's head more and more.
Thank you, Helen. The next speaker is Bernhard Geier. So Bernhard has a very long history of involvement in the organic movement. I don't think I would be able to list all the things that you were possibly involved in. So I just let you take the floor and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dennis. Dear friends, cari amici, I'm looking forward to a double challenge. In Germany we have a saying, the last one is bitten by the dog. The last speaker. Luckily I'm only the second last. I'm sorry for Damiano, but I'm sure you will not be bitten. The other challenge is that being a slow food activist and being in Italy, I think we should be at this time of the day sitting together and enjoy a nice meal. Instead we have actually very tasty food for thought. And I can add a little bit some food for activism by introducing you the Save Our Soils campaign. And I would like to start pointing out that being aware of the danger of destroying the soil is not something new. If you go back, we find this old Sanskrit text from 3,500 years ago, which is really worth reading and taking attention to. Upon this handful of soil, our survival depends. Husbanding it will grow our food, our fuel and our shelter, and surround us with beauty. Abuse it, and the soil will collapse and die, taking humanity with us. Well, if we follow this, we would need a United Nations Year of Soil. Because we don't follow, we need a United Nations Year of Soil, and we need a lot of action. And I'm able to present you the action. This one going. By the Save Our Soils campaign. The Save Our Soils campaign, and actually Roberto, that is an international campaign, very active, very successful, which is exactly tackling what you demanded, and I invite everybody to join. We have, over the last 2-3 years, we have been able to invite and attract over 200 organizations around the world to join this campaign. It includes FAO, WWF, all the organic organizations you can think about, mainly and first of all IFOAM, etc. And we bring the awareness of soil to the people, and how we do it I can share with you in the next few minutes. We focus on 3 messages. The soil is the limit. This is the look at the catastrophe, at the wrongs we do. With this we keep short, but we still need to do to get the people's awareness. We need to shock them with the reality and the facts, which we have seen quite a few this morning. The main point is, the main message, organic is the solution. Organic can feed the world, and organic is the soil solution. We like to play a little bit with words, as you can see. And as important is the message, it's in your hands. Get active, become a soil mate. We first said soil job, but being a Gambian, I didn't like the militaristic term, so we invite you to become a soil mate and join the efforts. A very good, clever way, and this is due to the fact that the founder and inspirator of this campaign is a fruit, mainly a vegetable trader, a big one, organic one from Holland, Volker Engelmann. He is also reaching to the point of sales. He's reaching to the people in the markets. And they've created a soil-made tomato kit, which has no information about tomatoes. It's just all the species used with the key messages of the Save Our Soils campaign. And the good thing is, it has soil in it, not only the tomatoes, and you can grow your own basil. It has seeds. Not everybody is lucky having a garden, not everybody has even a balcony, but in all the cubicles we live, John, I think everybody has windows, and you just need a window to grow a pot. And this gives the people a hands-on feeling. They can smell the soil, they can feel the beautiful compost of the soil, and it's very, very successful. We found a lot of support from very famous people around the world. It includes the Dalai Lama. We have talked and exchanged with Prince Charles about it. The former UNDP director, Klaus Töpfer, and many more have supported us in the campaign and in the highlight of the campaign this year. And by the way, I get the reminder that this is okay. It's yeah. One of the highlights, I would dare to say, of this year's United Nations Year of Soil, beyond the organic movement, was the Celebrating Soil, Celebrating Life conference in Amsterdam, which was just at the end of June. We had some 500 participants from all over the world speaking, especially spiritual leaders in plenaries, roundtables, and in master classes. And it was the first conference I can remember, and you wouldn't believe how many conferences I have participated in my life, hundreds. It was the first one-day conference with not a single PowerPoint presentation. I know I challenged myself having used PowerPoint, but it was impressive. And so we really celebrated soil. And we had a beautiful session with the Inuit Eskimo shaman, Angangak, the man who looks like his uncle, a Jewish rabbi, Abraham from Amsterdam, the Archbishop who followed Desmond Tutu, Makopa in South Africa, Muslim. Many of you know Ibrahim Abelech from Egypt, known as founder of Sept. Then we had Volker Engelsmann, I don't know, representing the non-believers. And we had the chief of the zoo, Indian running horse, chief running horse. And it was a fantastic event where we could celebrate, but we also had action. We had all the famous people, including Madana Shiva, for example, which is very well known in Italy, I know. IFOAM president, we see hands-on in the soil. And we were taking the pavement on the sideway off, did a little bit of civil disobedience in the tradition of Gandhi, and reclaimed the soil under the pavement and planted plants to make the point of this aspect of soil destruction. Tobias mentioned briefly the Save Our Soils Fund, which will assist farmers around the world. And initially, the Soil and More, the initiator of the SOS campaign, the Triodos Foundation, ethical bank based in Holland, the Amtree Farms in Uganda, and the Lebensbaum company in Germany have put 200,000 euro together. The target is to raise $500,000 for this Save Our Soils Fund. We started a social media campaign with very nice slogans, and by the time you have read this headline, 8,800 square meters of fertile soil have been destroyed. People can click I like organic and release the funds. We talked about soil is not sexy. If you try to present soil as a sexy thing, you have to be aware that you run the risk that you become called a sexist or macho. I take the risk by drawing your attention to the t-shirt of this young lady. By the time you've talked me out of this shirt, 92,000 square meters of fertile soil has been destroyed. So we should have a good sense of humor. We should not be just serious and fighting. We should take it a little bit from the easy side. And it is successful, it works. We can prove it. Because through the campaign, if you click on Facebook that you like organic, you release 10 euro of this allocated funds. And this is able to help to preserve and save 1,000 square meters of soil. We got, in a very short time, 32,000 people liking it, and they saved together 32 million square meters of soils. Actually, we run out of the funds, and we really have to get more people helping to join us, that people, by joining the Facebook, can get on board. The most prominent supporter, by the way, has been Julia Roberts. The moment we had her on Facebook, it just went bananas. We were one day the leading on Twitter, worldwide leading. We reached out to 12 million people with just this campaign, I Like Organic. That shows you how, if we're clever, if we're smart, if we use social media, we can really reach out and bring the message to the people. And we have a very nice a leading rap hero from South Africa, Mentor, has made a beautiful rap video, and I invite you to see it. If you have only 10 minutes, I cannot show you a 4-minute video. I invite you to see it and actually learn much more about the campaign once by picking up maybe a flyer outside and go to the web page. There's a very good toolkit. We give a lot of tools which people can use in their campaigns. These nice posters, these nice slogans all over the world, and they do it. So it's free for you also to pick it up, watch the video, watch maybe a few clips about statements about you can join the Amsterdam conference in a way, and help become part of this campaign. And the Save Our Soils webpage is given here. And before I come to the thank you, I want actually to lead over, because I'm happy that I can share this slot to a partner organization which we have teamed up, and they have teamed up with us. It's the People for Soil campaign, which Damiano in a minute will present. We are now next year focusing fully on supporting this campaign with all the movement we have already united behind us. And my invitation to become activists, if you are not already one, includes to join the People for Soil campaign, which is in a way an SOS campaign. And I hope I made you curious enough that you can listen and follow to the last speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anne has done the introduction, so I don't need to do that. Thank you for that. Damiano Simine from People for Soils.
First of all, thanks to Barbara for his work. About our campaign, we want to give a right to soil. This is the aim of our campaign. It's an European campaign. We are launching in the next year as a participation campaign, but we nowadays are working to form the network of organizations in Europe to sustain this campaign. People for Soil presently is a free and open network of NGOs, but also of research institutes, farmer association, and environment. The promoters of this campaign are 5 organizations based here in Milan, and we are Legambiente. It's my organization. It's an environmental NGO, the most spread environmental NGO in Italy. The LIPU, that is the Italian representative of BirdLife International, the INU, that is the Institute of Urban Planner in Italy. Actually, that is a very spread organization of social promotion of Catholic inspiration, and CIA, that is a farmer organization, Italian national farmer organization, a very important organization of conventional and organic farmers that are working together with us as a task force based in Milan for manage and launch this campaign in all Europe. Obviously, we are concerned about the loss and the degradation of soils in Europe, and also in the global level for a number of phenomena that you surely know. But our point of view is we started from the worry about land take. This is a major problem in Italy. each year in EU we lost something like 400,000 hectares of land, and our concern is related to the fact that urbanization and infrastructure are competitive with the more valuable soils, with the more fertile soils, flat soils, the main natural and agricultural resource of Europe, where we are presently destroying huge amounts of productive soils. We are in Lombardy, we are within an event that is EXPO. For realizing this event, they funded investment in Lombardy for destroying something like 1,600 hectares of fertile soil, mainly for realize a new network of highway in the countryside, in one of the more fertile countryside of Europe, that is Pianura Padana. And this was the original reason that pushed us to manage for an European campaign. But we are also aware about the other problems that concern that regard the European soil, mainly in the Mediterranean area, where the loss of carbon in soils combined with the expected effects of climate change will bring desert within Europe. As we know, we all are aware that the desertification is increasing in the southern part of Europe, in Spain, Sicily, in Greece, where increasing surfaces of soils are losing their fertility and their structure. Our aim, our target is make pressure on European institutions, as we think that specific legislation on soil protection is urgently needed now, and rules and principles has to be fixed and to be complied by the member states of Europe. We think that Europe in the past, with its environmental legislation, had an important role also at the global scale for driving legislative change in the world. But presently, there is not a recognition, an acknowledgement of soil as a common good. And this is a real trouble, as soil is essential for our lives and is the main resource, natural resource of Europe. Obviously, we want people be aware of the role of soil for their own lives, but what we want with our campaigns is to turn awareness into action, to introduce in our legislation principles of soil sustainability and the soil conservation. You know that soil is not is an environmental matter that in Europe has not a framework legislative framework of rules. Also about soil contamination, an example. Also about the conservation of carbon in soil, not just for about land take or soil seeding that are the problems that are more visible by the people. Our rules are not sufficient to ensure adequate level of protection for all soils in Europe. We present in Europe, we make environmental dumping in soil. As a real estate investment, an example, are more easy in countries that have a different legislation. An example about soil contamination is more easy to realize investment in the real estate where soil contamination is not assumed as by a national authority to to the adequate precaution. And this is it's quite strange because on the other environmental matrices, such as water and air, Europe and the member states have an enormous legislation. Just soil hasn't any legal acknowledgement. What we think as the environmental and economical service of soils is something that more important, more precious for the European people and enterprises than the borders that are on land. We are aware about the importance of national sovereignty or administrative responsibility on land and private property of land. But we think that the environmental and social role of soil has go beyond the administrative and private partitions of soil, and this has to be recognized. No one has the right to destroy soil. One can manage soil, but nobody can destroy it, because soil is a common good, and this is what we want is affirmed by European and national legislation. And we want to use the 2015, the International Year of Soil, to launch the campaign. Now we think to launch the campaign on 5th of September. The date may be changed because in those days there is also an important happening that is the Paris Conference on climate change, so we are combine the dates to avoid superimposition or something like that. We launched the first time the campaign in June here. There was also Gaba and many other people in EXPO. We have a first event to present the campaign. Presently we have an internet website, and we are developing a social network instrument to make easier connection to the campaign. And the network is increasing. Presently there are 58 organizations, national, Italian, but also from each part of Europe that are involved, and 3 networks that are already a part of the network. And the reason why I am here is to ask your support and partnership to there is, as I said, to turn awareness into action, to give soil a legislative chance within the legislative framework of Europe and to give an example that may be useful also for the rest of the world. Thanks.
Damiano. Oops. Thank you, Damiano. Questions from the audience?
Dennis, I would just like to add, I know from previous campaigns to get 1 million signatures is not an easy task, and most of the initiatives have not made it. I'm confident we make it, but I would like to take the organic movement in committing that we bring 500,000 of this 1 million votes. I think we can strong enough. We have the markets, we have strong organizations. I just look at Helen, I know you already exchanged. We have the BirdLife International, Royal Bird Society in England is very big. The environmental groups, the biggest German environmental group has 500,000 members alone. If everybody signs, we would have the signatures in Germany. So, but it's not easy, it's easy said, not easy done. So maybe this is also an outcome of today, that this will be the soil issue of next year. And I'm so extremely emotional engaged in all this, because I know that Germany was one of the leading forces who kicked this, who killed this initiative. And so we have to do something good to change this.
Thank you, Bernhard.
Yes, of course we are aware about the difficulty of getting a similar target. But we remember that in Italy, in Europe, a proposal of a framework directive on soil failed in 2014, blocked by a number of states, important states. There was Germany, France, the Netherlands, I think also the Great Britain, opposing to a framework directive. And the reason is certainly that there was a strong opposition by important lobbies, the real estate, also the big agricultural conventional organizations that were worried about the fact that legislative regulation on soil quality may be more difficult to attain the subsidies to agriculture. We are fully aware, but we think that the real reason why that proposal of directive did not reach the target of become not a project but a real directive was that there was not a push from the people. The European politicians were not interested to produce an environmental directive that was required just by academics and concerned scientists and the officers of the Commission. We have to be aware that a change in European legislation requires a higher level of awareness and also a sign to politicians to attain the change, to be able to change the legislation.
Thank you, Damiano. We will still have the opportunity to discuss also among speakers in a little moment, so maybe we can carry on with that discussion in a little while. So thank you. So, whoops. Yeah, so we're through the 6 presentations that we have scheduled for today. Just looking back at what was discussed, we had Tobias Bandel this morning talking about how sustainability is sometimes used as a buzzword that loses its meaning unless it's really applied with honesty and not just from a marketing perspective. And also focused a bit on the aspect which is sometimes not accounted for, which is that there are invisible costs already there, you know, that someone has to pay for polluted groundwater, etc., but those costs currently may not be visible, but they're already there, and at some point we'll have to deal with them. Maybe a quote to repeat from Tobias was that we need to upgrade the status of food. And in terms of the big visions that we have, it's important to carry on having visions, but maybe break it down to a level where we can actually transform them into action. Roberto then took stage, and he gave us a perspective on the frustrations also of soil not being considered sexy and not being considered maybe something to include in the mainstream media, and told us about the amount of pesticides and fertilizers the chemicals that are used per hectare. And he compared it also to a company facing bankruptcy. So nature, our planet, is facing bankruptcy unless we do something about that. And concluded by saying that a very intelligent communications campaign would be necessary to do something about that. Then we had John, who showed us some stunning images, and his focus was that yes, it is possible to restore the ecological function. So even where there is degradation, it's not about taking the attitude that something is degraded, therefore not worth investing time or attention to. But yes, things can be reversed, so that's not an excuse for not taking care in the first instance, but it is possible to reverse degradation. And another interesting concept that John raised was that soil fertility is what is of real value, and that should be the basis of money. And if that change is envisaged, then greater value would also be given to things that currently are not sufficiently valued. We then had Helen, who shared some of the work of the Soil Association and gave us some background on the work and the intention also to increase organic matter by 20% in the next 20 years, so very concrete action there. And the idea that farmers are soil builders and also fulfill an important role. We talked about communication briefly and maybe targeting also the consumers in understanding and appreciating soil, whether that's also through using other things like these to draw their attention to that. And now you just heard two presentations by Bernhard and Damiano on some campaigns that are currently going on about soil that maybe also illustrate that yes, clever things on social media, etc. are already being done. Interesting messages or interesting ways of messaging are being found to communicate with consumers and the broader public. Before we go into a broader discussion round with all speakers and also the audience and where you can contribute and ask questions, I would just like to continue with a video that hopefully will also stimulate some discussion, some interest and some thoughts. And that will be an extract from Home. So it's a 2009 documentary that I very much like. And if we could start the video now.
D'expliquer que notre façon de vivre sur la Terre n'est pas viable, qu'on a un impact sur la Terre supérieur à ce que la Terre peut supporter. Et vu du ciel, ça se voit relativement bien, et ça nous donne une perspective très différente de celle qu'on a au sol.
On a montré finalement comment toute l'histoire de la Terre, l'histoire ensuite du vivant, cette incrémentation continuelle, cette accumulation de richesses qu'a fait la Terre au cours de son évolution, puis l'arrivée de l'homme, et comment il s'installe et comment sa vie va changer avec l'arrivée du pétrole.
On regarde ça comme un article dans un journal, un peu comme un film de science-fiction, comme si on n'était pas touché. Mais la sixième extinction, c'est nous. Ce qui se passe au Brésil avec le soja, ce qui se passe avec l'huile de palme, ce qui se passe avec les poissons, c'est nous, quelque part. Il va y avoir un retour, qu'il y a un équilibre qui s'est fait sur la Terre pendant des milliards d'années, qu'on est en train de le casser. Bien sûr, on vit encore très bien, mais ça, obligatoirement, il va se passer quelque chose.
A lot of things have changed. It gets really hot, really warm, and you burn your skin off, and then you peel out your skin. It was never like that before.
Complètement pris par une vie quotidienne sans se rendre compte qu'on a un impact sur la Terre absolument invraisemblable. On est en train de fouler notre capital qu'on n'a pas. Il n'y a pas assez de bois, il n'y a pas assez de poissons, il n'y a pas assez de terre. Il y a un vrai problème. On consomme trop et on est en train d'épuiser tout.
Nous n'avons jamais dépendu autant des ressources naturelles et nous ne sommes jamais autant coupés de la nature. changement ne peut se faire que si on en est tous conscients. Certains sont conscients et agissent, et il faut aussi développer la conscience de ceux qui ne peuvent peut-être pas agir, mais en tout cas qui pourront suivre. Et pour suivre, il faut avoir compris.
Au film, on a essayé de toucher un peu les endroits où ça faisait mal, c'est-à-dire les endroits où la terre est blessée. Donc c'est vrai que ça fait comme un film un petit peu quelquefois lourd, je me dis quelquefois ça manque un peu d'optimisme, mais c'est très difficile de faire un film optimiste avec des images qui sont pessimistes. Alors il y a toujours de l'espoir et de l'amour, mais c'est pas toujours facile. Manifeste ce film, c'est un film qui a un vrai parti pris d'expliquer que notre façon de vivre sur la Terre n'est pas viable et qu'on a un impact sur la Terre supérieur à ce que la Terre peut supporter.
I was going into the second round there, that wasn't intended. Okay, so Home is a movie, and Home actually stands for Hands Off Mother Earth, which I thought was quite cleverly done. Quite some heavy pictures there as well, but I chose that clip because I think it touches on a few things that already came through in the discussions today: overconsumption, unsustainable production, intensive mass production, etc. The need for a paradigm shift, and I would invite speakers individually to give a brief statement on your thoughts of what you've heard from your fellow speakers today, but also from the short movie clips that we've seen today, also this one, and what that inspired and triggered in you. So starting off, as you wish, maybe left or right would be an obvious choice. Yes?
Hello? Okay, now it works. Perfect. Yeah, well, a lot has been said. We saw a lot of pictures. I guess in this topic, sort of everybody is right, and at the end, it boils down on what everybody of us, can do, and it doesn't stay with the words or with the pictures. And I'm personally more a pragmatic person, but I'm extremely thankful and happy that there's other people who are more on the policy level and NGO level and company level. So I think we need all, and maybe stick to what is authentic to us and what we really can do, and not just because it's hip or something, but what we truly believe in. And then there is this dilemma, like you said, there's this bigger philosophical level where actually not soil is the problem, but we are the problem, or not the climate change is the problem, but we are the problem, and that's of course a huge discussion. But it's about this consciousness which we need to develop, and out of which we have to incarnate sort of concrete action for next Monday. So it's a continuous journey. It's not easy, but it's great. And so I think on these movies, it's important to raise awareness and cultivate consciousness for the problem, but maybe we shouldn't overdo it. I think it's equally important, if not more important, to show what's possible, like you do, because otherwise we're overwhelmed and we think, okay, there's no hope anyway. But show practical examples, what can be done on mega scale, because it's very emotional, very touchy, but also very small scale, micro scale, what you yourself can do next Monday. So yeah, that's basically just a few thoughts. Thanks.
I think I'd rather hear from the audience.
I would like to connect to what we saw just at the end. It's a beautiful film, Home, and we have beautiful films about a catastrophe. I'm involved in filmmaking, and I've decided to engage only in film projects that show the beauty. As a matter of fact, I've done a film about the Dutch home farm of Prince Charles, with filming partner, and yes, with pessimistic pictures we cannot make optimistic film, but organic farming is delivering us very optimistic and very nice and beautiful pictures, and if we use them, we should bring this across. I think you need first the pessimistic pictures that people wake up, but then you have to follow with something. If you leave them with the wake up films, they go out of the cinemas, and I've seen it often. Oh, what a shitty world, nothing I can do, it's too late, it's 5 to 12, as you said. By the way, I don't worry about 5 to 12 or 1 to 12. My watch always continues after 12, and I think we should not get scared by this symbolic clock here. It's late, but it's not too late. So my conclusion would be that we use actually the beauty of soil. The soil is beautiful. Working the land can be beautiful, to bring the message across and get the people attracted to do something about it, to save it by this positive approach of the beauty of soil. I don't know if you walk in from the train station. Two things strike me. The one is this automobile propaganda welcoming every country, and they welcome Cuba with the Alfa Romeo sport cars, and they welcome Ghana with the Jeeps. I thought I'm landing on a really strange planet here at EXPO, but I saw also a beautiful poster on the left side from a food company. I actually googled it. It's kind of a good company here that makes the point: good food, beautiful food can only come from beautiful landscapes. And that brings us to the approach of John. We have to restore the landscapes if we have beautiful landscapes. And one of the biggest inspirations I had in the last years is from my friend Doug Tompkins, the one who founded North Face and Esprit, and is now an environmentalist and organic farmer. And he said, Bernard, that's everybody, whatever you do, look if the outcome is beautiful. Then you are very sure you do the right thing. If the outcome is ugly, you can bet it's wrong. And if you look at the soil, how its soil looks, if we have had responsibility for it, we know if we do right or wrong.
Well, I agree with what everybody said so far, but I think the challenge is always in my head: can we do this, or are we going to have to go through some pretty brutal shock for humanity before we actually are prepared to act in a unified way? Because some of this stuff does require unified action if you're going to make big systemic changes. So that's always plaguing my head. Are we just building arcs, some of us, and keeping skills and ideas alive for when they will find more fruitful ground? But I suppose my more pragmatic sense in terms of how do we make this stuff relevant to a lot more people is that we probably need to be able to meet people's current needs, or their thoughts about what their current needs are, whilst transitioning them to new solutions. I'm not sure that we can expect this paradigm shift in people's consciousnesses to happen quickly enough without a big external shock. So we may need to be a little bit more pragmatic at times in working with the current impetuses and the current constraints of democratic governments and all the kind of challenges that brings, in a good way as well as a bad way, and think about how can we sell this to people so that they don't just back off and try and put us in a box marked balmy.
No more to add, not much to add, but I think we really need to increase the level of topsoil because there is an undervaluation of soil in the scale of values of society, and I think it is very difficult if I think to what was the meaning of the big campaigns on water in the last year, how they changed the legislation, the perception of water strategic importance. I think that that is the model we have to look to work for. Explain to the people what is the value and the potential of soils, and to explain also. I very agree with about that people needs to look to find landscape, to places where they can appreciate the complexity of nature. But I also think that we have to explain what is the meaning of soil for our future. In this expo, I am quite happy because we attend as Italian NGOs that work in sensibilizing the people two reasons. The first one was to keep off the big pharma from the expo. There was an attempt by big pharma enterprises that are present in the National Pavilion, but it's not the main presence. Also with GMO, there was in the last month before the start of the event, there was a strong pressure by the GMO producers to be present in this expo, and they are not here. And this is very important for a global event to keep off this representative of economy. And the second one is a strong sensibilization about the waste of food. There was a huge campaign against the waste of food to local and global level. I think that it was not enough the campaign against the waste of soil. And one must think that if we waste food, we make something of disgust. Really, really bad, because we throw away something that may be useful for other people. But if we waste food, we waste something that the next year will be regenerated. Well, I will not justify to waste the food, but just for comprising the importance of soil. If we waste soil, we waste something that will not may produce food for the next generation. So that it has an enormous message that we are up to be able to transmit. Soil wastage is something of tremendously irresponsible by humanity, by enterprises, by society, and by politicals.
Okay, I think it's not so relevant now to campaign about organic. We work usually every day campaigning for organic. Now I want to campaign about soil, because I think I know in Scandinavia, in Northern Europe, people are more sensitive to ecological issues, but because they have a lot of animal farms, they have problems in the water and so on. But in Southern Europe, the most part of organic consumers are concerned about their health, about pesticides, about residues, and they have an ecological approach. And in my opinion, is the best way to work. It's more amusing to work with the people which has an ecological approach. So, and because it is deeper, and because the problem is not zero residues, the problem is changing the paradigm of food producing. And if people which never thinking about soil start to go in deep in the soil issue, we have the possibility to build a strong movement in all society, and it is a strong tool for us and for the environment.
Okay, thank you. Any input, comments from the audience? Yep.
Yeah, we started the whole session, the whole thoughts with the year of the soil. And I think this is one of the highest momentum a topic can get, because it's the United Nations that declares the year of. At the same time, I think during the session you heard a lot of meaningful messages also. Most of them focused on the one hand on the problem, So we lose so and so many square meters of soil while we're talking, for example. And many of them also concentrated the potentials, how much land can be regenerated. We saw the impressive pictures of John. What I'm wondering a little bit is, what is now the impact of the Year of Soils? Because we are talking a lot that we need campaigns, we need sensitization. So we got such an opportunity. Now what's the impact of such a really high level opportunity? That's the question in my head. I don't know who can answer that. Who can make a guesstimate?
Well, I hope we see the impact in 5 or 10 years on the soil. Less degraded soil, much more organic farming. From my observation on the one side, I'm a bit disappointed. I think the organic movement has not fully, and the environmental movement as well, has not fully used the potential. We could have done more. If I think about the biodiversity year, that, okay, it's more on the agenda already, more interest involved, more beautiful pictures and threatening pictures. We should have done a bit more, but I think we have done well, and certainly this accusation is not going to us here because we are active. We raise the banner and the flag. We need to do more. I'm glad that the year ends, but then we continue with an action everybody can join, which is the campaign next year for the signatures. We can do very concrete things. That makes me optimistic. And just one more example. I just have contributed a book which comes out these days in Germany about soil. And my task was to write about, is there any sexy message in soil? And I use another example. I am organizing a film festival at the occasion of the Berlinale. And our theme this year was soil, soul, food. And we had fantastic response by the audience to the films we showed, to the discussions we had. We talked about terra preta, we talked about sealing the land, about land grabbing, etc. So if you're out, if you're grading, we have fantastic responses in the SOS campaign. I'm confident we have fantastic responses to the People for Soil campaign. So yes, I see already the impact that we reach a target, we're making much more awareness, and with the awareness raising we come with the organic and positive and solution message. And this is something very good. Win-win, I would call it.
I think it's been a great hook for a lot more people to start to become a bit more aware. I think the media in the UK has used it. I think that Bernard's right, we could be making more of it, but I think it has raised the profile of the issue. And it's a difficult issue to get airtime for because it doesn't feel like, ISIS or, something that's going to impact on people day after tomorrow. I think the big challenge actually is not seeing this as a one-year thing and a one-year opportunity, but seeing it as starting a movement for change, and to be planning way beyond the year, because if we're too disappointed by what we can achieve in 1 year, given we're a whole bunch of quite small organisations facing a lot of very big, powerful forces, you've got to use this as the start of a marathon, really, rather than a 1 year sprint.
I would add one thing. Biodiversity got a decade. It's a decade of biodiversity.
I wanted to add one thing that was touched on indirectly through some of the comments made by the speakers was accountability. And I think that personal responsibility also for choices comes in. Now, Damiano, you mentioned you couldn't quite understand why food waste was so hugely successful, but then soil isn't. I think it has to do with soil's relevance in people's day-to-day lives, whereas they're in contact daily with food because it's something we have to do every day. Soil, especially for people in urban centers, may not be part of the day-to-day reality. So it's to establish that connection and make people understand, okay, that's actually the source of life and the source of food and the source of everything else. That is maybe a challenge, and making it relevant to people daily. I don't have a solution for it, but just a thought.
Just one little feedback from us. Of course, soil is sort of our daily work, and there are so many campaigns where you get engaged every day. And this year, to happen now the year of soil, so next year's maybe water and I don't know what. So it's this system approach, but I guess it will take time, but it didn't do bad. Yeah, and what I can tell, at least from the farming reality, is that many farmers in the countries we have been this year, say India, Honduras and Kenya for instance, they didn't know this is a year of soil, but they were extremely surprised. So why? I mean normally they just care about pricing and like please sustainable but please cheap, and now they start caring about soil. So weird species, those consumers up there. But they also like the idea and say, okay, that's a step into the right direction. So probably it's going to take time, but I think it's good to put out the message, and yeah, the farmers at least liked it a lot, that people start thinking about them, one of their most valuable assets.
Una domanda, alcuni osservatori mettono in guardia da try to say it in English. Some writers like Michael Pollan, for example, in the United States, start to worry about the so-called big organic, so organic farming at industrial level. So my question is, what do you think about this? Will big organic take care about the soil? Shall we hope that organic will grow so much to be defined big, or what do you think?
That's a good question. Big organic. Thoughts from our speakers? Yeah?
Yeah, maybe I just kick it off, because I have dealt with this question in my time as IFOAM director for 30 years. And I have been quite provocative to people that ask this question. I hope you bear with me. What is big? The biggest organic farm is 700,000 hectares. In Australia, it needs 100 hectares to feed a sheep, and it might not be enough food on it. So please get away from hectares and big in size, rather look what's happening. The question is it organic what's happening there? And organic can happen big. Sept is not a small farm, it's the showcase of organic in the world. I've been on very big organic farms in America and other places. We can discuss the social questions, land right questions, other issues, but big as such is not an indicator. If it's big and it's challenged, like Michael Pollan rightly challenges industrialized organic farming, this is the challenge we have, the conventionalization trap of organic farming, then it's wrong. But then I would challenge that it's not anymore organic. But it's not connected to the size. I can do organic farming on 100,000 hectares, I can do organic farming in the little pot on my balcony. As long as it's organic farming, it's the right thing. If it looks beauty, I know it's the right thing.
Want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll come on that a bit, because I think I agree that it's not about size, but I think it is about going beyond organic as simply, which I think sometimes when you get big corporations coming into organic, they see it initially as just the absence of using fertilizers and chemicals, and of course, true organic farming is much more than that. It's much more about what you do than what you don't do. And having that real depth of understanding and developing those complex systems, I have seen sometimes companies come in and be told by their retailers, you must do some organic, and they're doing it not well enough. They're running very too straightforward rotations. They just haven't really designed it as you would design it. So there can be good organic farming and bad organic farming. It's not a size issue necessarily, but it's about good management or poor management. And I'm very interested, and we're doing a lot of work at the Soil Association, about how do we judge the outcomes of the system, rather than just saying if you follow this series of standards. That can be a constraint as well as a huge benefit to have quite clear standards. You need to be thinking about what are we trying to achieve here. How many people are we employing, what quality of life do they have, what is the biodiversity potential of the system, and making sure that within organic we are really focused on delivering great results from our systems, and not just say the fact that we're organic is enough. That's not about size, it's about good farming.
Can I answer?
Another opinion. When we started to work in organic, our objective wasn't to keep small farm in organic way. Our vision is the conversion of farming in a green way. In 1991, I was in Vienna at a United Nations meeting. There was Bernard too, and Bernard said our objective is 20%, and everybody jumped on the seat because in the 1991 we haven't the first European regulation yet. We have nothing. In Italy we had around 3,000 organic farmers, and nobody knows other organic farmers. Now we have more than 50,000 organic farmers, and it's in the law. It's Bernard. But now, if you said me, okay, what's your objective? I have no problem to say 50%, because Austria has shown they are able to arrive to 20%. Sweden is 17%, Estonia is 10%, Italy is 12%, so 50% is not a problem in the next 12 years. So I cannot reach a large share of national farming without involving even some large company. I cannot have, because it's only GMOs friends which ask, when they speak about organic, they say, okay, organic is very fine, small farms, artisanal production, stay away by the market, because we are the market. Okay, you can stay alive, but in a zoo. I don't want to live in a zoo, I don't want a cage, I want all Italian agriculture in 100 years is organic. So I am being stronger than Bernard in Vienna 50 years ago.
Yes, I would say that there are a couple of things that I've thought of as people were talking. One is that we have enough crisis to realize what's going on. I mean, if we have to wait, is Katrina enough, or is Fukushima enough, or when is it going to be enough? We can keep having these crises. We have financial crisis, we have whatever crisis. It's enough already to understand what's going on. So it's really a question of whether we're going to take the step and move to the next level of consciousness. And then I think in terms of what we're talking about, sometimes we're talking about market share for organics. This doesn't make any sense to me. I think what we're looking at is really a transition to a new type of civilization, a civilization which is based on ecology. So everything is ecological. It has to be 100%. It's not. It's like 30% or 50% organic, and then the rest. This is more about lifestyles. We have to find that it's joyous and wonderful to live in a beautiful place where the water flows and there's wonderful biodiversity. And it's terrible to live in a place where you get into traffic, to go to work in a cubicle, to have financial flows. We're looking at two different types of systems, biotic systems or abiotic systems. And right now the majority of people believe that their quality of life is determined by abiotic systems, by politics, by finance, by whatever. This is simply untrue. So it's just a mistake, and at some point people will realize this. So historically, it won't be a question what's determining survival and sustainability. It will be well understood.
It's air, water, food, and energy. It's not the movement of the Dow Jones Industrials or some kind of crazy thing like this. Those are abstract and meaningless, really, and they're manipulating the billions of people who have been disenfranchised, who lost their rights hundreds of years ago, and they live at the edges of large degraded ecosystems. So this is not the creation of wealth, it's the creation of a destructive system which disenfranchises billions of people around the world and destroys the Earth's fundamental ecological function.
Okay, so you're talking about systems. I'm going to throw in a question for you, John, as well. So you have these opposing and conflicting systems and ambitions, money-driven and then ecologically driven, if you want. But what do the people do who are trapped in that kind of urban environment, who have a 9-to-5 job and have to go on the subway every day, etc., and are caught up in that life? So how to break out of it? Because we're not talking about just a few people in that situation, but
Well, yes. I don't think the answer is to ask an individual to determine what the entire society will do. I'm a researcher. I go to look at what is happening, and what I see is that when moisture infiltrates into the soil and is retained in organic material, and when biomass is allowed to reach a climax equilibrium, not an interesting term for most ecologists right now, but I see that if you reach this sort of climax, it's a dynamic equilibrium, it's not static, but in this case, it's the fullest potential. It's optimal. And we have said, well, I don't care about science. I don't care how much organic material, how much biomass, how much biodiversity there is. We're just saying, well, whatever I can get for myself, that's the determination. This is death. This is destruction of natural systems which we all rely on for life. And if we have the intellectual capacity to understand what this means, then we need to go to the next level of understanding. Because then every human being on the world, on Earth can survive, and all human energy goes to protect these things. We have this ability now. We have the sum of human knowledge, which is available to every human being on the planet, if we choose. If we try to buy and sell it, and we say, well, no, this knowledge belongs to me. Well, no, then we don't have it. But if we give it to everyone, if everyone has it, that's our potential now. We need to take this now, because we are at the crisis point. The civilizations fail. You don't need to wait any further for more disaster. There's plenty out there.
And I think with that, we're back to awareness raising and instilling knowledge.
And it's a collective decision. Once you flip to so if I were to analyze this financial system, because I think this is where the hard part is, I would say it's inverted. The derivatives have been inflated, and the source is zero. Well, that's just fundamentally false. So you have a fundamentally false definition, and anybody who talks about it inside the false definition, you don't get a different result. You always degrade. You can be less bad, but you can't be good. And when you understand that ecological function is the basis of life and all wealth, then you have a totally other perspective. If we base our monetary system on ecological function, then we would have essentially flipped the economy. If we flip the economy, is that a bad thing? So most people are saying, well, how would we do it? Well, we couldn't go to work, what's going on? No, it would be a good thing, because then all work would go to restore ecology.
I see Helen on the edge
of
the seat.
The way I'm frustrated, because of course everybody agrees, but that flip is not going to happen just like that. I mean, if we all understood, how are we going to get people that change can take place. And I think that you do have to start thinking, I do think you have to approach the individual. And the one thing, it's such an intractable problem when you have so much power vested in the status quo. But I do think that one thing we could do is get every kid to have a profound experience in that kind of natural environment. Because I think that you will never get the next generation to flip, to get it, to back the change we need to see, unless they have connected themselves personally, emotionally, within the kind of environments that you were showing us today, John. And if we could get that to happen, and that's one of the things we try and do on a tiny scale through Food for Life, that we need every child to be in that environment for a period of time, feeling great about it, understanding real things at last.
Can I just respond for a moment? I went to China in 1979, and I found a desperately poor country with people with no self-respect saying, "What are you coming here for? You live in America. Why would you possibly come to this horrible place?" That's not how they feel about themselves now. I watched as China emerged from poverty and isolation. Then I watched as the Soviet Union disappeared. Enormous transformational change takes place quickly.
In China?
No. Worldwide, the Soviet Union disappeared in a day. No one calculated this, and maybe the Chinese helped to make this happen, because they shot the students in the street on TV. Not a good PR move. And then when East Europe and the Soviets issued live ammunition, the soldiers wouldn't fire. Good. So, things change. The Loess Plateau in 1995 was a desert. It's now a functional system, and if it continues in this direction, it's not perfect, but it's better. And you can have this transformational change. When it does happen, it is not about being managed. When flat Earth turned to round Earth, or at the end of slavery would be a good one. Slavery had institutions and laws which were just horrible and wrong. And it went on for hundreds of years. But at some point it had to stop. Why? Because it's false. And this is false. And this has to change. So it will change when people decide. And I don't understand why the people who understand that organics is better, or that natural ecological function is the basis of life, why they would think it can't change. We can't go to the next level. This is like a crisis of faith, a crisis of belief. We know that it is true, and it can happen.
And the truth will out. So, any further input from the audience? We'll have a few more minutes left before we have to leave the room for a press conference that will take place. Any concluding thoughts from the speakers before?
I want to send also a message of hope in what John said. As we should not leave the room going to lunch or whatever without this hope. We have an example closer to us. It's the GMO movement, the anti-GMO movement. If I see what Monsanto and the likes have invested trying to get Europe into GMO, and they have battled for 20 years against it. And you know how much they spent in England on a propaganda campaign, and the outcome was that after that, the poll, at least what I heard, was that people were more opposing GMO than they were accepting. And so if we manage to focus the message, if we manage that the people, it's good that I triggered off the decision, then we can do it. And if we are not the optimists, who should be? If the environmentalists are not the optimists, I mean, who is left to be an optimist? If the moment we accept to be put in the pessimistic camp, then it's really that's it.
From Tobias?
Yeah, I fully support, because linking actually to your question, Marcus, I don't think necessarily it's about size. Of course, we want the entire planet to change, but go and do it, and don't wait for politicians or governments. It's always opinion leading minorities. It's not economic elites, it's consciousness elites. And whether it's one or in 1 week, or that's sort of details, but change starts from a small group, and I guess this is the role of organic, and I don't care so much if it's like 5% or 50%, as long as it's authentic and people do it. And if they go beyond the size of their consciousness, then normally the farms get too big and they do funny things. Call them organic, just chem-free, but it's not just about farming. Anyway, so just find your spot and do it, I think, and then we're gonna make it, no doubt. I'm extremely hopeful, I know it.
Anyone else wanting to say something before we finish up?
Well, I would back that, because I think there is that thing, like what's your individual opportunity to make something different happen? We all have different opportunities, and I think it's about grasping what's possible for you, understanding what we understand. And I do think part of that is sharing this with as wide an audience as possible, because we do need more, we need to get it, and we need to find that, we need to make the message attractive and optimistic enough that they can buy into a beneficial future. That's why I completely agree with Bernard, and so we've got to sell that in. I reacted to the GM thing because, in a way, one of my big frustrations in the environmental movement over the last 20 years has been the amount of time we've had to spend on fighting this one darn technology, which is effort we could have put into developing new solutions for a better future. We've spent all our time rowing about one stupid development, and actually we haven't changed the system by doing that. We might have given Monsanto a bit of a bloody nose and it's all gone, but what we haven't done is stop this happening again. We could win on GM, and we could have a similar technology come down the pipeline in another 2 years' time, and they're already queuing up. And all we're doing is about saying at the end of the process, we reject this, take it back. Actually, we need a fundamentally different approach to the way we do research, the way we bring new innovations into our precious environment, and we need to make sure that people's views are right at the heart of that we don't end up wasting all this time and effort fighting something which we shouldn't have had to fight in the first place.
Thank you, Helen. With that, I would like to conclude with a final, very short clip. But I would like to thank, of course, the speakers for having traveled all the way here to be with us today, and also to the audience who, despite of it being lunchtime, have stuck with us until the end. So thank you, and if we can watch the final little clip.
I am the soil. I am in the hills and in the valleys, the farms, the orchards. Without me, humans could not exist. But you treat me like dirt. Do you realize that I am just a thin skin on this planet? And that I'm actually alive, full of organisms that grow your food. But I am broken, aching, overused, sick, because of you. You have withered me away to less than half of what I used to be just over 100 years ago. Are you paying attention? I am turning to dust. So maybe you could treat me with a little more respect. I suppose you still want to eat, right?